Chapter 988. Zhao Luan, when did your patience become so bad? Sha Yuan laughed loudly, and said, you'll know when you get down there. Zhao Luan humphed. He was a few hundred years younger than Sha Yuan, so he had only just advanced to the consummate level, while Sha Yuan was already at the peak stage of the consummate level. There was a difference of 3 sub-minor levels between them. If they really fought, he was confident that he had secret techniques, so he didn't need to fear Sha Yuan. However, Sha Yuan naturally didn't need to fear him either. Thus, he could only humph when Sha Yuan rebutted him like this. Otherwise, with his narrow-mindedness, it would be strange if he didn't kill Sha Yuan. Ling Han arrived at the platform halfway up the mountain. Just over half a year ago, he had battled with Luo Ba here. He hadn't thought that he would encounter a battle to the death so soon. Bai Yuanxi was already waiting for him on the platform. He sat cross-legged on the ground like a stone statue, and didn't look impatient at all. For experts like them, not to mention a few hours, they could even maintain their state of mind for a few days. Ling Han stopped, and stood 30 meters away from Bai Yuanxi. You're here. Bai Yuanxi opened his eyes, and it was as if a bolt of lightning had instantly flashed through the clear sky. As expected of an elite in the high extreme. Just a single gaze was so terrifying. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I'm here. You've broken through to the medium extreme so quickly. That's rare and commendable, Bai Yuanxi continued. It's just so. Bai Yuanxi paused for a moment, and then said, my young master still lacks a dog. If you obediently submit, I can still spare your life. Ling Han laughed coldly, and said, it's your own business if you're willing to be a dog, but you still want to drag others down with you? You're really despicable to the bone. Impudence. Bai Yuanxi roared. Quang. Blood flowed from the ears of many people, shocking them. The might of his roar was actually so terrifying. He stared coldly at Ling Han, and said, since you're so stubborn, then die. Ling Han pointed a finger at him, and said, I originally wanted to spare your life, but since that's the case, there's no need for me to show mercy. Boastful talk. Bai Yuanxi leaped forward. He didn't even draw his weapon. Instead, he stretched out his right hand, and 9 intertwined divine patterns appeared. He then pressed his palm towards Ling Han. Since his strength had completely surpassed them, all he had to do was crush them head-on. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Xiao. He also leaped toward Bai Yuanxi. The two of them were pouncing toward each other, so they naturally clashed immediately. Peng. Bai Yuanxi's palm struck Ling Han's chest. Divine light surged, and ripples formed in the air. His face was filled with arrogance. Ling Han would definitely be torn to pieces if he was hit head-on. But he immediately revealed a look of astonishment, because not only was Ling Han completely fine, he even smiled at him. To hell with it, he didn't have the time to think about why Ling Han wasn't injured. He immediately wanted to retreat. This was too strange. Right at this moment, Ling Han raised his hand and tossed out a net. Originally, with Bai Yuanxi's abilities, he wouldn't fall for this net at all. However, the two of them were so close to each other. Moreover, this was after his attack. Bai Yuanxi thought that he could kill Ling Han, the large net spread out, instantly trapping him. Although Bai Yuanxi was surprised, he didn't panic in the slightest. He had followed Zhao Luan to many ancient sites and dangerous places, and had experienced far too many dangers. Staying calm in the face of danger was the most basic quality. Otherwise, how could he have the right to follow Zhao Luan? Chang! He drew his sword, and sword light instantly rang out like a song. Goodbye. Ling Han drew his bow, and directly unleashed the ultimate arrow. He didn't want to give Bai Yuanxi any chance to escape. He wanted to slice off one of Zhao Luan's claws. At this moment, all of the hair on Bai Yuanxi's body stood on end. A powerful sense of danger welled up in his heart. He hurriedly channeled his full power, yet to his shock, he discovered that his origin power had actually been suppressed. He could only unleash the power of the middle stage of the medium extreme at most. What kind of net was this? This thought flashed through his mind. However, it was at this moment that the tip of the arrow was already pointed at his chest. It was like a great killing weapon that had been nurtured by heaven and earth, causing his palms to involuntarily sweat. Ling Han released his grip, and the arrow transformed into a streak of light. Pooh! The arrow pierced through Bai Yuanxi's body without any suspense, forcibly piercing through his head. The arrow flew out, and only a few drops of blood remained on the tip of its tail. Pa! Bai Yuanxi's entire head exploded. Insta-kill. A deathly silence descended upon the surroundings. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually be able to defeat Bai Yuanxi? Moreover, not only had he won, but he had also done so in an inconceivable insta-kill. If their positions had been switched, no one would have thought that it was strange. After all, Bai Yuanxi possessed such strength. Now, however, everyone's mouths were wide open. They were completely unable to believe or accept this. Indeed, there were prodigies who could defeat those at a higher cultivation level. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such things as 1-star geniuses and 2-star geniuses. However, no matter what, the gap between Ling Han and Bai Yuanxi's cultivation level was clear for all to see. There was a whole 5 sub-minor levels between them. Moreover, Bai Yuanxi himself was close to a 3-star genius, so the gap between the two of them was at least 7 stars. Surpassing 7 stars and insta-killing him with a single strike. If they didn't believe it, who could believe it? On the mountain peak, Zhao Luan's expression instantly became extremely ugly. A person like him naturally wouldn't care about Bai Yuanxi's life or death. After all, Bai Yuanxi was merely a dog that worked for him. If he died, he could just find another one. How could he be afraid that no one would side with him? The problem was, even if you wanted to beat a dog, you had to first find its master. Now that his dog had been shot to death in front of him, how could he accept this? I know. That's the Crimson Ground locking net. What Crimson Ground locking net? The Crimson Ground locking net. Anyone who is trapped by it will be suppressed by a minor level. No wonder. The spectators all nodded in agreement. If Bai Yuanxi's cultivation level was suppressed by a minor level, then his peak battle prowess would only be at the peak stage of the medium extreme. At that time, insta-killing by Ling Han would become a possibility. Humph. Zhao Luan shot down from the mountain peak and stood beside Bai Yuanxi. He stared at Ling Han, and coldly said, "You killed him. If there's nothing wrong with your eyes, you should have seen it clearly." Ling Han was completely exhausted after shooting that arrow, yet his aura wasn't the slightest bit inferior to Ling Han's. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. That was Zhao Luan, the #1 genius of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the only son of great General Zhao. Zhao Luan's expression darkened, and he coldly said, "Since you've killed my man, then there's nothing more to say. Kneel and kill yourself." So domineering. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Young Master Zhao, are you stupid? Can't you kill your man in a fair battle? I'll kill him fair and square. I'll have a clear conscience even in front of the Empress." "Humph, you killed my man, so you must die." Zhao Luan raised an eyebrow, and exuded a terrifying aura. "Stupid bird." Ling Han sneered, and was just about to withdraw the Crimson Ground locking net and leave. Shua! Zhao Luan moved, and slapped at Ling Han. He was at the consummate level, and furthermore, he was a 4-star genius. How terrifying was this? Moreover, Ling Han was currently at his weakest. Pang! Ling Han was instantly struck, and he was sent flying by the palm strike. He's not dead. Zhao Luan looked at Ling Han, who had blood trickling down the corner of his mouth, and couldn't help but look astonished. Cell phone reading. Chapter 989. Although that palm strike just now wasn't his full power, it definitely wasn't something that a medium extreme cultivator could withstand. When people talked about how many stars a prodigy had, they were referring to the destructive power of their battle prowess, and not their defense. Thus, even if Ling Han was a legendary 5-star genius, his defense was only at the early stage of the medium extreme. How could he take a direct hit from Bai Yuanxi and only suffer a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth? Zhao Luan immediately recalled that Ling Han had also taken a blow from Bai Yuanxi before, but hadn't been injured in the slightest. However, Ling Han had instantly killed Bai Yuanxi afterward. That was too shocking, and no one thought about the previous scene in detail. Could it be that this guy's body is made of godly metal? Zhao Luan was astonished, but his hands didn't stop moving. He immediately shot out another palm strike, pressing down on Ling Han. Although that palm strike just now hadn't killed Ling Han, it had wounded him. It was clear that no matter how strong his physique was, it wasn't invincible. Ling Han retreated. With so many people watching, he definitely wouldn't expose the secret of his spatial god tool unless he encountered a situation where he would definitely die. However, he had just shot the ultimate arrow, and needed some time to recover his mobility. Putting aside the fact that his opponent was Zhao Luan, even if a shattering void tier cultivator attacked, he wouldn't be able to dodge. Since I've already made my move, how can you escape? Zhao Luan smirked coldly, and pressed his palm onto Ling Han's chest. Pooh! Ling Han was once again sent flying. He felt as if his body was boiling, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. However, to his pleasant surprise, both his origin power and stamina were rapidly recovering. At most 30 minutes, he would be able to recover to his peak condition. The recovery of stamina was within expectations, but why could his origin power also recover so quickly? This was a change that only appeared after he advanced to the medium extreme. Wait, he had also recultivated the Universal 8 Desolation technique. Could it be that this cultivation technique still had some effect? Previously, though he had also been at the Mountain River tier, he hadn't cultivated any immortal level cultivation techniques. Would it also be affected? Ling Han couldn't be sure, because ever since he shot that arrow in the flame cave, he had changed too much. As a result, he couldn't determine which one was the main cause, or if all of them were added together to cause such a change. Peng! He landed on the ground, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth again. He felt his godly bones cracking as if they were about to break. Zhao Luan was not an ordinary consummate level cultivator. His battle prowess surpassed 4 stars, and even if Ling Han's physique was as tough as level 3 godly metal, he still suffered considerable damage. If it was continuously bombarded, it would still be destroyed. However, the spectators were all scared shitless. This guy was only in the medium extreme, yet he had only bled a little after taking 2 blows from Zhao Luan. This was too exaggerated. Zhao Luan's gaze was cold as he strode towards Ling Han. So what if his physique was strong? Could it stop him from killing someone? Zhao Luan, you've gone too far. Li Weiwei stepped out bravely. That's my man. You're not allowed to touch a single hair on him. Zhao Luan didn't stop, and said, "Fourth young miss, if this person was your husband, then I, Zhao Luan, would give you face. However, he is only your dog, and my man was killed by him, so he naturally has to pay with his life." Bullshit. Li Weiwei was enraged. She had also been pampered since childhood, so when had she ever been disrespected? She instantly spat out a string of profanities. She pointed angrily at Zhao Luan, and shouted, "It was clearly a fair duel, and the surnamed Bai is even a minor level higher than Ling Han. If anyone is talking about fairness, it is Ling Han. I don't care. I only know that my man was killed by this dog. If I don't kill him in revenge, it will disappoint the hearts of my followers." Zhao Luan was also unreasonable, and made use of this reason. For a descendant of a noble like him, as long as he had an excuse to kill Ling Han, he would be able to turn a big matter into a small one, and escape the punishment of the Academy and the Imperial Court. Then, he could keep a low profile for 2 or 3 years, and naturally, he would be able to strut out and do whatever he wanted. Li Weiwei was so angry that she cried out, "I don't care. If you want to kill him, you'll have to step over my dead body first." Fourth young Miss Li, you think too highly of yourself. Zhao Luan pointed at Li Weiwei. Pooh! A ray of light immediately entered her body, causing her to be unable to move or open her mouth. She was completely reduced to a decoration. Zhao Luan smiled, and said to Ling Han, "You think that just because this is the academy, I won't dare to kill you? You're wrong. It's just that I've never placed you in my eyes. But you're not willing to be my dog, and you even killed my man. That's just seeking your own death. Surnamed Xiao, you've only cultivated a few more years than me. If we were at the same age or at the same cultivation level, I would be able to suppress you with a single hand," said Ling Han disdainfully. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. If Ling Han had knelt down and begged for mercy at this moment, perhaps Zhao Luan would have spared him. After all, he had only been humiliated. But Ling Han actually dared to provoke him like this. That was really driving himself to a dead end. But thinking about it again, Ling Han's words were actually very reasonable. What cultivation level had Zhao Luan had when he was in his 20s? Indeed, he was very freakish. He had reached the consummate level of Shattering Void tier with battle prowess of 20 stars in his 20s, and Mountain River tier had not been able to trap him for long. However, at least until he was 50 years old, he was still only in the low extreme. In comparison, the gap between the two of them was very obvious. Zhao Luan smirked coldly, and said, "What status do you have to compare yourself with me?" Pang! He moved again, and sent Ling Han flying. From the first time Zhao Luan had made his move until now, quite a while had passed. If his first strike was said to have taken people by surprise, then so much time had passed, and the academy should have already known, right? But not a single elder had appeared. Even if Zhao Luan was now very impressive, any Sun-Moon tier cultivator would be able to easily suppress him. Even 5-star geniuses could not possibly surpass the barrier of a major cultivation level. Was this the academy's tacit approval? The son of the great General Zhao was really capable of covering the sky with one hand. Everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. That was because the person Zhao Luan wanted to kill today was Ling Han, but what if it was them tomorrow? They were obviously being watched by tens of thousands of people, yet not a single person extended a helping hand. What kind of terror was that? Stop! Another shout rang out, and they saw a beautiful woman shoot over. Gu Lingyu. No way, how did she get involved with Ling Han as well? Hiss! Among the 3 beauties of the imperial capital, there are actually 2 beauties standing out for him. This guy's luck with women is really good. Everyone immediately recognized that this was Gu Lingyu, one of the 3 great beauties of the imperial capital. Moreover, she was also a new student of the Alchemy institution. Zhao Luan's expression was incredibly dark. Even if Gu Lingyu was a disciple of the Alchemy institution, he would not take her to heart at all. However, what made him displeased was that there were actually so many beauties that were willing to stand out for Ling Han. Was Shui Yanyu blind? He was the only son of the great General Zhao, and his own talent in martial art was astonishing. He had always been praised as the #1 genius in 1,000 years, and his looks were even ridiculously handsome. But why were there no top-notch beauties throwing themselves at him? He was actually inferior to an ant from a small world. This caused him to be unable to restrain his fury, and his killing intent blazed wildly. Chapter 990. If it could be said that Zhao Luan had only wanted to kill Ling Han previously for the sake of face, then from this moment on, Zhao Luan finally took Ling Han seriously, viewing him as an enemy that had to be eliminated quickly. Towards enemies, he naturally had to be as merciless as the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Zhao Luan's expression was cold, and he pointed a finger. Gu Lingyu also turned into a stone statue, unable to move. Hee, no wonder you're so arrogant, daring to oppose me. So it turns out that you're living off a woman. Zhao Luan closed in, and struck out another palm strike, pressing down towards Ling Han. But I'll let you know that the person I want to kill has never escaped. Pang! The palm strike landed, causing the ground to tremble slightly, but Ling Han disappeared from the ground. N. Zhao Luan showed a sliver of surprise because Ling Han had pushed the ground with his palm just then, and used this force to escape his attack. Ling Han moved his limbs, and channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. The wounds on his body healed at a visible rate. His eyes shone, and he said, Zhao Luan, you're not qualified to cover the sky with one hand. After such a long time, he had already recovered some of his power. Is that so? Zhao Luan immediately put away this bit of surprise. As long as Ling Han was still in the medium extreme, he could easily suppress him. He moved, and his origin power condensed into a giant palm that descended from the sky, striking out towards Ling Han. This palm was not only extraordinarily fast, but also extraordinarily large, and could not be dodged at all. Ling Han mustered all his strength, and punched out towards the sky, but the difference in power was too great. He was mercilessly knocked down, and another mouthful of blood spurted out. But amidst everyone's shocked gazes, he immediately crawled back up, his fighting spirit soaring. Was this guy an unkillable god of war? Everyone was stunned speechless. At first, the consummate level could crush a medium extreme cultivator, and the gap of a whole 8 stars, and could be resolved with a single move. But Ling Han stood up again and again, and this refreshed everyone's understanding. So, the medium extreme could also be this strong. What kind of secret art did this ant from the small world cultivate, or what kind of secret treasure did he obtain? Why is his combat strength so strong and his physique so tyrannical? Even Zhao Luan became greedy. He realized that he had underestimated the people of this small world. He thought that this small world was primitive and backward, so it was impossible for secret treasures to appear. He was wrong. He absolutely did not believe that anyone could be born like this. This must have been some kind of inheritance that Ling Han had obtained, a shocking inheritance. He's gonna die. Zhao Luan finally unleashed his true power. He slammed out with his palm again, and divine patterns flickered, interweaving with a terrifying might. Ling Han let out a loud roar, activated the earth overturning seal, and activated the Eye of Truth, striking back at his opponent. Bam! In just one clash, he was once again sent flying by the shockwave. Putting aside the fact that Zhao Luan was a 4-star genius, even if he wasn't, the gap of 8 sub-minor levels was not something that Ling Han could make up for. However, his physique was far too powerful. Taking this attack head-on only caused a few cracks to appear on his skin, yet his godly bones were still completely unscathed. This made things much easier. He channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and his wounds instantly healed at a rapid pace. Everyone was shocked. They had never seen anyone with such a strong physique before. So be it if his physique was strong, but the problem was that even his recovery ability was so freakish. What could they do then? Unless they could severely wound Ling Han with a single strike, if it was only a light injury, he could completely recover over and over again. It would be useless no matter how exhausted they were. Ha 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 ha. Amidst a long laugh, a figure leaped down from the peak of the mountain, and just happened to stand between Ling Han and Zhao Luan. Sha Yuan. With a schwa, he opened his folding fan, fanned himself twice, and said, Zhao Luan, where's my wager? Zhao Luan instantly looked furious, and said, could it be that I would blame you? That's not necessarily the case. As long as it doesn't enter your pocket, you won't be able to rest easy. Sha Yuan said with a smile. Even blood brothers have to settle their debts clearly. Quickly go and bring it over. Zhao Luan knew that Sha Yuan was deliberately interfering to protect Ling Han, but how could he allow him to do as he wished? He said coldly, Sha Yuan, don't think that I don't know what you're planning. What am I planning? Sha Yuan asked with a smile. Zhao Luan took a deep breath, and said, I'll give you 2 pieces of white cloud star metal, and you can stay out of today's matter. Sha Yuan's strength and status were not inferior to his. If Sha Yuan was determined to stir up trouble, it would really be difficult for him to deal with him. Thus, he didn't mind giving away another piece of white cloud star metal to prevent Sha Yuan from interfering. 2 pieces of white cloud star metal. Sha Yuan couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. If it was just 1 piece of white cloud star metal, then it could only be added to a god tool to increase the quality of the god tool. However, if there were 2 pieces, then it would be enough to forge a complete weapon. That was a level 7 god tool. Just thinking about it made his heart move. It should be known that from level 5 onwards, the amount of godly metal was pitifully small. He only thought about it for a moment before immediately making a decision. He said, fine. After saying this, he retreated to the side, acting as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Zhao Luan's gaze once again landed on Ling Han. This guy had caused him to lose another piece of white cloud star metal, causing his killing intent to burn even more intensely. At the same time, his desire to obtain that inconceivably powerful secret from Ling Han grew even stronger. Ling Han glanced at Sha Yuan, and the favorable impression he had of this person naturally vanished into thin air. He drew out his divine sword and clenched his left hand into a palm. He was going to defend his dignity. Meow. Who dares to touch even my cat slave? The large white cat appeared, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws at Zhao Luan. Headmaster Fu's beast pet. Zhao Luan was astonished. The lowly commoners of this small world were truly mysterious. In just a short few days, they had actually managed to form connections with the Left Minister, Headmaster Fu, and the Alchemy Institution. Pay. Only trash like humans can be my cat slave, the large white cat said in an extremely haughty manner. Ha, for the sake of Lord Fu, I'll spare your life. Zhao Luan tapped out with his finger again, intending to restrain the white cat. Xiao. The white cat's figure flashed, its speed incredibly fast. Zhao Luan was astonished. This kind of speed was slightly beyond his expectations. However, that was all. After all, his cultivation level was still at the low extreme. In just 3 moves, the large white cat had been subdued by Zhao Luan. Zhao Luan had also controlled his strength. He had only immobilized the large white cat, and hadn't injured it. Detestable human, hurry up and release me, the large white cat bawled loudly, appearing to be unable to restrain his fury. Everyone was astonished. The Left Minister and Headmaster Fu were 2 elites of the heavenly body tier, yet Ling Han was actually able to form good relations with these 2 great forces at the same time. This was truly unimaginable. Even Zhao Luan felt slightly weak. If it wasn't for the fact that Sha Yuan was still swayed by benefits, then it would mean that there were 3 great forces of the heavenly body tier that were acting on behalf of Ling Han. However, when he thought of the supreme inheritance that Ling Han might possess, he immediately strengthened his resolve. He definitely had to succeed. Die. He waved a palm at Ling Han. You're the one who's going to die. Ling Han roared in fury. His sword and palm moved simultaneously, and he began his counterattack. Chapter 992. Though Zhao Luan was both furious and shocked, firstly, he didn't dare to disobey the 9th king, and secondly, the female guard who made a move was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, and one in the medium extreme. Her strength was who knew how many tens of thousands of times stronger than him. Without any suspense, he was immediately restrained. Black divine chains appeared on the 2 mountains and rivers, and he was forcibly locked down. His cultivation level instantly dropped to the medium extreme, the same level as Ling Han. Though there were elites in the academy, they didn't make a move just now because they were wary of Great General Zhao, and now that the 9th king personally gave the order, who dared to interfere? Which was stronger between Great General Zhao and the 9th king? What a joke. If great general Zhao dared to oppose the ninth king, then very soon, the 7 great generals would become the 6 great generals. There was no doubt about this. Now, you can fight again, Hu Feiyun said coldly, seemingly without the slightest bit of bias. Zhao Luan was naturally furious. What kind of demonic power did the lowly commoners of this small world have? In just over half a year, the daughter of the left minister and the 9th king stood up for him, and though Shui Yanyu and Gu Lingyu's status was much lower, they were still young ladies of prestigious clans, and their reputation spread far and wide. So what if it's a battle of equals? I, Zhao Luan, am the #1 genius in 1,000 years, who can be a match for me? He laughed loudly, but this time, he really didn't dare to be careless. He clenched his hands into fists, and Wang, golden light immediately bloomed from his hands. Pu, 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 his sleeves bulged as if his muscles had suddenly exploded. This is Great General Zhao's ultimate technique, the damaged gold fighting Buddha fist, someone immediately exclaimed. Yes, it's one of Great General Zhao's ultimate techniques. Legend has it that when Great General Zhao was still at the Sun-Moon tier, he once used these 3 fist techniques to smash a powerful opponent at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier into meat paste, and from then on established his status as a supreme elite. After so many years, Great General Zhao must have improved the power of the damaged gold fighting Buddha fist greatly. Zhao Luan is serious this time. That's for sure. Now that everyone's cultivation level is the same, Ling Han is a 4-star genius. Isn't he seeking death if he doesn't get serious? How come I heard that Ling Han reached the island 3 times? He might be a 5-star genius. Hee, 5-star geniuses only exist in legends. How could it be that easy to reach the level of a 3-star genius? He is indeed stronger than Zhao Luan, but he is at most 4.5 stars. There is no way he can reach 5-star. Amidst the murmurs of discussion, Zhao Luan strode out, and closed in on Ling Han. Ling Han used one hand to press on the wound on his left rib. Zhao Luan's palm strike earlier contained a strong corrosive force that could melt metal and melt bone. Moreover, it had also formed divine patterns on his wound, constantly acting to prevent him from recovering. Ling Han had to first get rid of these divine patterns before he could completely recover. However, these divine patterns were abnormally stubborn, and there was no effect when his essence force surged through them. Presently, he could not enter into the Black Tower and borrow the power of the Black Tower to expel it, so he could only think of another way. With a thought, Ling Han activated the divine patterns of flame. The divine patterns clashed, and the variant divine patterns were quickly burned to ashes. True enough, when he had seen Zhao Luan attack, there was a layer of divine light that rippled like water. It should be a water element cultivation technique, which just happened to clash with the fire element. Both were the best ways to neutralize each other. In a battle of equals, I will still suppress you. Zhao Luan charged over, his fists shooting out. First technique of the broken gold warring Buddha fist, heavy wave rises and swirls. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, in a battle of equals, I have never met an opponent that can match me. You will not be an exception. He used the earth overturning seal, and charged toward Ling Han. Pang! In the first collision, Ling Han stood proudly and unmoving, yet Zhao Luan stumbled back a dozen or so steps. The blood in his body churned, and his face alternated between red and white. Gasp! In a battle of equals, Zhao Luan is actually not Ling Han's match. The whole crowd erupted. Putting aside Zhao Luan's character, his talent was indeed the highest in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in the last 1,000 years. In fact, he had even shown great potential, and had a chance of becoming an elite of the heavenly body tier in the future. However, such a domineering figure had actually fallen into a disadvantageous position in a battle of the same level. This Ling Han's power is definitely not as simple as the early stage of the medium extreme. He has probably reached the peak stage. That's right. This palm technique of his is very ordinary, yet it can explode with such terrifying battle prowess. It can only be because his power far exceeds his cultivation level, and thus compensates for his battle prowess. Gasp! Going by this logic, if he cultivates a high-level secret technique, his battle prowess will be even stronger. He can become a 5-star genius. Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. Could it be that they were really going to witness the birth of a 5-star genius? Damn it, damn it! Zhao Luan roared, and made a comeback. Broken Gold Warring Buddha Fist, second technique, rising wave of mountains and rivers. Boom, the power of this punch suddenly increased explosively by 3 times. Ling Han once again shot out an earth-overturning seal. Both of them were channeling metal element cultivation techniques, and as golden light intertwined, it was as if they had become golden gods of war. However, after this clash, both of them were sent flying backwards. They were now evenly matched. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, and said, "Your strength is only a so-so. I still have an even more powerful third technique that I have yet to use." Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "You think too highly of yourself, and are too good at deceiving yourself. Who said that my strength is only a so-so? Is that so?" Zhao Luan charged over again, still using the second technique of the Broken Gold Warring Buddha Fist. The two of them clashed, golden light intertwining, and it was incredibly terrifying. Very few people noticed that after each clash, a sliver of gold would appear in Zhao Luan's eyes. After more than 10 exchanges, his eyes had actually become completely golden. Broken Gold Warring Buddha Fist, rising wave of 9 layer of waves, piercing sun and moon. He let out a loud roar, and his body rapidly expanded, turning into a golden giant that was at least 10 feet tall. He finally struck out with his most powerful punch, and his battle prowess had increased by a whole 9 times. It wasn't that he had been lenient earlier, but rather that the eruption of the third technique required both his physique to keep up. Thus, he had to first enter the state of a golden body of 30 feet, and this required time. However, once he completed the transformation to the golden body, this attack was earth-shattering. Boom, a huge golden fist smashed down from the sky. There was not a hint of finesse, and it was a complete suppression of brute force. Ling Han still struck out with his palm, but he only used the earth-overturning seal. Pang! The fist and palm were lower, and their sizes were completely different. The golden fist crushed all the way, pushing Ling Han back continuously. If it weren't for the fact that the rocks here were extremely sturdy, he would definitely have left 2 footprints on the ground. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, and brandished his 2 huge fists, crazily smashing them towards Ling Han. The Broken Gold Warring Buddha Fist had a total of 3 techniques, but it wasn't a difference in technique, but rather the method of exerting force. The third technique consumed a lot of energy, and it also had a considerable side effect. After all, one had to erupt with battle prowess by 9 times. However, in the process of this eruption, one could practically kill gods and Buddhas in their way. In the same cultivation realm, who could be a match for him? Chapter 993. You dare to fight with me for the title of number 1 genius? You're still far from it. Zhao Luan laughed loudly. His golden body was now 10 meters tall, and his voice was like a great bell that was deafening. Both of his fists struck out continuously, like a barrage of arrows, one punch after another, as if he would never stop. Everyone was astonished by Zhao Luan's might. As expected of the number 1 genius in 1,000 years. This was really too ferocious. In a battle of the same cultivation level, even if it was the peak stage of the medium extreme, how many people would be able to withstand such a frenzied bombardment? Ling Han snorted and activated the divine runes of gravity. Zhao Luan instantly felt as if he had sunk into a swamp. He took a step forward, but couldn't lift his back foot. His entire person staggered. Divine gravity runes. Zhao Luan humphed. He had also obtained a gravitational mountain river stone before, so he naturally knew what was going on. He also activated the divine patterns of gravity to counteract the gravitational force. Then, he condensed a giant golden fist and punched toward Ling Han. Rumble. This punch was too frightening. It compressed the air to the point of forming layers of ripples. Ling Han was fearless as he unleashed his 7-kill subduing soul art. Zhao Luan suddenly felt as if his brain had been pierced by a needle, and the pain made him want to groan. He was very experienced and immediately realized that he had been hit by Ling Han's spiritual attack. He quickly stabilized his divine consciousness. However, it was in this moment of sluggishness that his fist suddenly lost its aim. Ling Han seized the opportunity to grab his wrist and fling him away. Bam! His body was large, so his fall was heavy. When he smashed into the ground, his expression became ugly and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Zhao Luan is injured. In a battle of the same realm, someone had actually managed to injure Zhao Luan. This was definitely super big news. Zhao Luan had always been synonymous with being invincible among his peers, but now, he had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would have believed it? Arg! Zhao Luan let out a furious howl, and the blood vessels on his golden body bulged like hundreds of golden snakes, giving off a malevolent aura. He slammed his hands on the ground, and his whole body immediately bounced up, charging toward Ling Han again. Boom! A fist surged over, and it was as if a divine mountain was pressing down. I said that if we were at the same level, I could suppress you with a single hand. Ling Han placed his left hand behind his back, while his right palm pressed towards Zhao Luan. However, this was not the main point. He used the 7-kill subduing soul technique and launched a mental attack at Zhao Luan. Immortals cultivated their souls. Previously, although Ling Han had used mountain river stones to raise his power to the immortal level, his divine sense still remained at the same level because he didn't have the corresponding comprehension of cultivation level. However, after drinking the reincarnation tea, his divine sense had become far stronger than an ordinary shattering void tier cultivator's, and added with the tempering of the second layer of the indestructible heaven scroll, his divine sense was not only strong, but also incredibly stable. It was not the slightest bit weaker than an ordinary mountain river tier cultivator's. When he truly advanced into the mountain river tier, the strength of his divine sense naturally also received a qualitative increase, far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators at the medium extreme. It was definitely comparable to those at the high extreme, or even the consummate level. Therefore, even though Zhao Luan's divine sense was actually at the great perfection level, he was still unable to withstand his spiritual attacks, and continued to attack. Although he was only slightly affected each time, in a battle between experts, this slight effect was enough to determine the outcome of the battle. Peng, peng, peng. Although Zhao Luan's punches were filled with power, every punch missed, so what was the point? He would either be smashed painfully by Ling Han, or be continuously struck by his palms. Quang, quang, quang. A crisp sound rang out from his golden body, as if his body had really turned into metal. Who would have thought that aside from being able to retaliate a few times in the beginning, Zhao Luan, the #1 prodigy, would become a one-sided beatdown later on. Zhao Luan was unable to restrain his fury. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, this was practically a great humiliation. His eyes suddenly turned cold, and a powerful aura suddenly exuded from his body. It was incredibly ancient, and filled with majesty. Power of the nation. Many people blurted out. Not long ago, Zhao Luan had just received an imperial title from the Empress, becoming a 7th-rank military general, and could use the power of the nation. Although the power of the nation he could use could not compare to that of the left minister, the 7 generals, and the others, his cultivation level was also low. Even if he was allowed to use it, how much power of the nation could he use? With the support of the power of the nation, Zhao Luan's declining momentum instantly disappeared. His golden body once again shone brightly, and it was even more resplendent than before. Peng, 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 peng. He seized the opportunity to counterattack, and his attacks forced Ling Han to retreat step by step. Ling Han was slightly astonished. With the support of the power of the nation, even Zhao Luan's divine sense seemed to have a layer of protection. His 7-kill subduing soul technique actually bounced back forcefully, and was completely ineffective. Die! Zhao Luan's eyes were bloodshot, and his tall figure cast a large shadow over the crowd. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You've only increased your battle prowess by 1 star, and you have the power of the nation to protect your divine sense. It's not like you have an indestructible body, so what's there to be proud of?" He pulled away from Ling Han, used his body as a bow, and his origin power as an arrow, and shot out. Zhao Luan was astonished. Previously, Bai Yuanxi had been insta-killed by this very arrow. Although the might of this arrow was much weaker in comparison, his battle prowess had similarly dropped, so he definitely could not be careless. He raised his hand with great difficulty. Pooh! This arrow shot into his arm. So what if he had a golden body? It was still pierced through by the arrow. At this moment, the arrow transformed into specks of origin power and disappeared. Fresh blood flowed out, and Zhao Luan's face was ashen. He had used the power of the nation to support his body, and he had thought that victory was within his grasp. He had not expected that Ling Han would immediately give him a resounding slap to the face. This was not the ultimate arrow, as Ling Han had not lost any strength after shooting this arrow. He immediately drew his bow again and shot a second arrow. Pu, Teng, Pu, Teng. Every time Ling Han shot an arrow, Zhao Luan would retreat a step. His body was riddled with arrow holes. So what if he had a golden body? He could not block the annihilating dragon star arrow at all. Arg! Zhao Luan roared furiously, and the golden light on his body instantly dissipated. His 10-meter-tall body had also returned to the size of a normal human. Although this 10-meter-tall golden body could give him a 9-fold increase in battle prowess, it also made him a living target, and he was even more vulnerable to Ling Han's attacks. Could it be that Zhao Luan was going to surrender? "I'll let you witness my true strength," Zhao Luan said in a menacing manner. As he stretched out his right hand, it actually turned into the shape of flowing water, pitch black like ink. Ling Han's heart trembled. It was this aura that had torn apart his physique with Zhao Luan's previous attack. His flesh could not be stopped at all, and it had directly corroded all the way to his godly bones before it was stopped. Could this be the ancient technique that Zhao Luan had been bitterly cultivating all this while? He thought to himself, but his hands did not slow down at all, and he shot out another arrow. Zhao Luan did not dodge or evade, and he madly charged towards Ling Han. Pooh! The origin power arrow shot onto Zhao Luan's body, and a strange thing happened. Zhao Luan's body actually turned into liquid, and it was so soft that it could not withstand any force. The arrow easily split open his body, and then directly passed through it. Furthermore, his split-open body automatically fused back together, just like water ripples. No matter how powerful a divine weapon was, could it cut through flowing water? Chapter 994. Xiao, Zhao Luan had already arrived, and his fist smashed out at Ling Han. Ling Han raised a hand to parry, but he immediately discovered to his shock that Zhao Luan's arm had also become like flowing water, breaking through his block and blasting down at his chest. Peng, he was immediately sent flying, and only landed on the ground after flipping 3 times. He lowered his head, and saw that his chest had been corroded, revealing his white bones. As expected, it was this kind of attack. Ha ha ha. Seeing that this move was effective, Zhao Luan instantly laughed loudly, and once again brandished his fists in a flurry of attacks. This was the ancient technique that he cultivated, and it was called Corrosive Water 3000. Previously, he had been standing under the waterfall to observe the rules of flowing water, and from there, grasp this ancient technique. Now that he was using it, its might was indeed astonishing. At this moment, Ling Han did not have a very good way to deal with it, and could only continuously retreat. Zhao Luan had definitely not simply transformed into liquid. Otherwise, with the might of a mountain river tear attack, even a large river could be turned into billions of water droplets, and Zhao Luan would have been smashed to pieces. Now, Zhao Luan had displayed the softness of water to the extreme, and was completely unaffected. Then, no matter how monstrous your power was, could you hurt me in the slightest? Ha 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 ha, this is true power. Zhao Luan laughed madly, throwing one punch after another. With the supportive power of the nation, he was equivalent to being one sub-minor level higher than Ling Han, and the power of the nation also had the effect of protecting divine sense. Now, his corrosive water 3000 could even pose a threat to Ling Han's physique, so no matter how he thought about it, victory was already within his grasp. In a battle of equals, I am invincible. Hearing Zhao Luan's hooting, Sha Yuan showed an expression of dissatisfaction, but he had to admit that in a battle of equals, he was indeed no match for Zhao Luan. He had not been able to defeat him before, and he was even more unable to defeat him now. This ancient technique that could transform into flowing water, filled with corrosive power, was really too terrifying. Turn into corrosive water. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, his eyes exuding a crazed cold glint. He had actually been forced to this step by Ling Han, and had to reveal this ancient technique ahead of time. This made him very displeased. This should be his trump card, which he would use to suppress powerful enemies in the future. Now that he had revealed it in advance, he would definitely be targeted by others, and they would look for ways to counter it. Thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. Previously, he had used the Flame Divine pattern to dispel the corrosive water poison. Could this be used to restrain his opponent? He was a man of action, and as the arrow condensed, he had already circulated the divine pattern of flame. Xiao, the arrow of origin power shot out, and the originally white arrow had a light red tint to it. Zhao Luan was fearless, not even bothering to block. He was going to repeat the same trick, allowing the arrow to pass through his body. Pooh! The arrow arrived, and without any suspense, shot into his left shoulder. However, as he had expected, the arrow did not fly out without causing any damage. On the contrary, his expression suddenly changed, revealing an expression of pain. Black smoke was rising from his shoulder, and there was a faint smell of roasted meat. Zhao Luan staggered backward, his face revealing an expression of disbelief and shock. Ling Han had actually broken his corrosive water 3000. How is that possible? Don't think that fire could restrain water. If the corrosive water 3000 could be easily restrained by fire, then would he still need to spend so much time cultivating it? The corrosive water was extremely poisonous, and did not fear fire. At least as far as he knew, to restrain his corrosive water, the only way was for his opponent to completely overwhelm him, shatter his body with a single strike, and severely wound him. Only then would the corrosive water 3000 stop circulating. Ling Han's power was definitely not that strong. Then there could only be one reason: the quality of his opponent's flames was terrifyingly high, not even inferior to his corrosive water 3000, which was why he could use fire to restrain water. What cultivation technique is this? He couldn't help but ask, incredibly jealous. One had to realize that he had spent several decades to successfully cultivate this cultivation technique, but Ling Han had broken through to the mountain river tier for less than a year, and could already cultivate a secret technique to counter his ancient cultivation technique. How could he accept this? This was practically a blow to his outlook on life that was about to be distorted. Ling Han gave an "oh," and said, "It's not any cultivation technique. It's just that I obtained a flame mountain river stone from the flame cave, and after refining it, I obtained a divine pattern of flame. I didn't think that it would coincidentally restrain you." Zhao Luan was dumbfounded. It was actually so simple. Ling Han did not cultivate any secret technique at all, and merely refined a few mountain river stones. He really wanted to cry. But he immediately thought of the effect of the gravity mountain river stone, and its effect was extremely shocking. And what Ling Han had obtained had to be a mountain river stone with a special attribute, which bestowed upon him a divine pattern of flame. Damn it, damn it, damn it! He repeatedly cursed in his mind. Was the divine pattern of flame really so powerful? One had to know that he had also obtained a flame mountain river stone. Though he had not personally obtained it, but obtained it through an auction at a high price, the divine pattern of flame definitely could not resist the corrosive water 3000. Unless, Zhao Luan suddenly asked, how many flame mountain river stones did you obtain? So, only 7. Ling Han said as he charged towards Zhao Luan. Now that he knew how to restrain the corrosive water 3000, what threat did Zhao Luan still have in his eyes? Peng, peng, peng. He rapped his fists with the divine pattern of flame. This was much simpler than attaching it to arrows of origin power. The 7 divine patterns all lit up, and his fists burned with flames. With one punch, Zhao Luan repeatedly spat out blood. 7. Zhao Luan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How precious were special mountain river stones. Even a genius like him could only reach the island twice, and obtain only 2 gravity mountain river stones. Ling Han actually obtained 7, he was practically a monster. This became the last straw that broke the camel's back, causing his fighting spirit to collapse. Moreover, he had been hit by so many arrows previously, so how could he have hit a dog? He did not have a tough physique like Ling Han's, and merely relied on origin power to forcibly suppress it. But he had to widen his golden body of 9 meters, and also suppress his injuries. How great was the pressure? Now that his fighting spirit had collapsed, he was instantly unable to hold on. Pang! He had been brutally beaten by Ling Han, and this time, he was truly defeated like a mountain. There was no turning back. That's what you get for being arrogant. That's what you get for being domineering. Ling Han treated Zhao Luan like a sandbag, and continuously bombarded him. Didn't you want to kill me? Come. Come on. You're just bullying others because your cultivation level is higher, and your background is better. What's the difference between you and those useless profligates? What number 1 prodigy? Bullshit. The more Ling Han spoke, the angrier he became. He turned his anger into fists, and continuously punched Zhao Luan's body. Have you had enough? Zhao Luan shouted. He was the only son of great General Zhao, so when had he ever suffered such humiliation? I can't take it anymore. Ling Han raised his foot, and was about to stomp down on Zhao Luan's face. Everyone was so frightened that they stopped breathing. If this foot stomped down, then there would really be a great enmity between the 2 parties that would not rest until one party was dead. But when they thought about it again, Zhao Luan had already made it clear that he wanted to kill Ling Han, so there seemed to be nothing to be afraid of. Why you dare? Meanwhile, Zhao Luan's face was pale with fright. If his face was stomped on in public, would he still have the face to see others? Chapter 996. If one were to say that the 9th king was bold, she could even scare a mouse into screaming, but if one were to say that she was timid, she could even do something like falsely conveying her imperial will. And in Ling Han's eyes, she was only a lonely little girl. Just lonely. Not to mention that she was the 9th king, with high status and power, and also had the protection of an empress who saw her as a sore spot. She was actually very lonely, and had no playmates of the same age. The other 8 kings and Empress Luan Xing were all busy with cultivation all day, and had no time to play with her at all. The guards by her side were all respectful and obedient to her, and could not possibly become her friend. Thus, when Ling Han saw that she did not kneel, she instead praised him as, Ling Han still has backbone, because she had seen too many people kneel to her. This was also why Shui Yanyu was able to quickly become friends with her, because she longed for a bosom friend of the same age. In the company of the 9th king, Ling Han had a good tour of the imperial capital. It was not until sunset that the 9th king reluctantly let him go. When Ling Han returned to the academy, he saw that Li Weiwei and Ji Yun were already there, and the 2 girls could not contain their excitement. You guys are grinning so widely that your mouths are almost touching your ears. You've come to get the wager, Ling Han said with a smile. Hee hee, I went to collect the debt at the first moment, how would they dare to not pay? Li Weiwei was very proud, and took out a black card and threw it at Ling Han. This is a true origin stone card issued by the Empire. You can exchange it for true origin stones at the Empire's bank at any time. It's very convenient, and you can take out as much as you want. Ling Han nodded. 4 million true origin stones was not a small number, and probably even the Empire's bank might not have such a number. But he was also a person who was an emperor, and knew that this virtual currency could be multiplied many times to promote the development of commerce. Anyway, in terms of cultivation, how much could this thing be used up in a day? Most of the time, true origin stones were only used as a hard currency, becoming a currency. With the backing of the nation, it could naturally be issued in excess. It was no wonder that Li Weiwei and Ji Yun were incomparably excited. They had only invested 3,000 true origin stones each, but they had first multiplied it by 10 times, and then multiplied it by 100 times. Now, each of them had a wealth of 3 million. In fact, 3,000 true essence stones was already a very large amount of wealth. When the two women took out such a sum, they felt pain in their hearts. But now that they had 3 million true essence stones, they were naturally overjoyed. Ling Han was also very excited. It was just that this kind of business could only be done once. After knowing how monstrous he was, which gambling house would dare to give him such huge odds in the future? He nodded to himself. If he wanted to earn money in the future, he would have to return to alchemy. Now that he had enough capital, he could squander it on alchemy. Otherwise, after refining a few furnaces, he would be penniless. That's right, I heard that there was another person who bet on you to win. Together with our bet, we almost made the gambling house spit out all the bets we took. We didn't even earn a single cent, Li Weiwei laughed loudly. Ling Han was surprised. There was actually someone who cared about him. Who was it? A cold yet beautiful face immediately appeared in his mind. Shui Yenyu was probably the only one who knew about his devilish side, and probably the only one who would support him. I got you an invitation to the auction. The time is the night after tomorrow. Don't miss it. Li Weiwei handed over an invitation. Ling Han took it, nodded, and said, I will definitely be there on time. Only then did Li Weiwei smile in satisfaction, and leave with Ji Yun. Because they had earned a small fortune, they naturally did not care about the meager income from selling ingredients. The two women only asked him for some ingredients for their own use. After eating these things, they would become addicted like spirit meat. Not long after the two women left, Shui Yenyu arrived gracefully. Wife, you finally remembered your man, Ling Han said smilingly. Who is your wife? Shui Yenyu immediately blushed, and rolled her eyes at him fiercely. Tisk, so thin-skinned, but I like it. Ling Han walked over, and was practically pressed against Shui Yenyu's body. Shui Yenyu could only retreat, but the moment she retreated, Ling Han advanced. Very soon, she was pressed against the wall, and there was no way out. Her pretty face was completely red, and she asked, What do you want to do? Want to? Ling Han nodded, and his whole body pressed against Shui Yenyu's graceful and delicate body, causing her body to tense up instantly, appearing extremely nervous. Shui Yenyu did not understand the dirty joke he was talking about at first, but she only understood after thinking about it. Instantly, she rolled her eyes. This guy was usually serious, but she did not think that he was actually so lewd in private. Have you decided to bear my children? Ling Han asked smilingly. I have a serious matter to discuss with you, Shui Yenyu said seriously. I am also talking to you about a serious matter. Ling Han's large hand was already exploring Shui Yenyu's delicate body. It's only been half a year, and you seem to have grown a little bigger. Pervert. Shui Yenyu's pretty face was extremely beautiful. Ling Han laughed loudly, and asked, What serious matter do you have to discuss with me? Let go of me first. Let's talk about it like this. I have serious matters to discuss, and you can talk about your serious matters. How could Ling Han retreat? He had already occupied 2 high grounds, and was currently measuring the measurements. Shui Yenyu's whole body went limp, and she wanted to push Ling Han away, but was too weak. She could only roll her eyes at him fiercely. However, she was naturally very flirtatious, and rolling her eyes was almost the same as throwing flirtatious glances, which made Ling Han even more excited. I accepted a mission that can be completed by 2 people, and I came to ask you to come with me, she finally said. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, and said, Did you miss me, and specially found a reason to stay with me? Who missed you, you pervert? Shui Yenyu naturally would not admit it. Ling Han lifted her chin, and said, Girlie, if you didn't miss me, why would you come to me yourself? Hee, since you've already come to me, if I don't eat you up, wouldn't I be letting down your kind intentions? He picked up Shui Yenyu, and walked into the house. Shui Yenyu was scared out of her wits. She was really afraid that Ling Han would cook her into cooked rice right now, and hurriedly struggled. If you don't want me to eat you up right now, that's fine too. However, you have to agree to a few conditions of mine, Ling Han said with a naughty smile. Shui Yenyu had no choice, and could only agree to a few of Ling Han's humiliating conditions, causing her pretty face to remain red. Now, can you tell me what mission you accepted? Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him, and then said, to annihilate a group of pirates. She panted, and a large hand kept moving around her chest, causing her thoughts to be restless. She rolled her eyes, and said, Can you stop for a moment? No. Ling Han shook his head sternly. Have you forgotten the conditions you promised me just now? This damn pervert. Shui Yenyu whimpered in her heart, but she had to admit that she actually liked this kind of feeling very much. She enjoyed it, but the reserved nature of a woman made her want to reject it, yet also welcome it. Students in the Shattering Void tier do not need to complete any missions, but starting from the low extreme division, they must complete a certain number of missions every year. Otherwise, they will be expelled from school. Shui Yenyu forced herself to calm down. Chapter 997. Students of the Scarlet Heaven Academy had to complete a certain number of missions every year. Of course, you could also complete a large number of missions within a year, and then not do a single mission for the next few years. This was because after advancing to the immortal level, a casual seclusion could last a few months, or even a few years. They couldn't expel a genius student just like that, right? The mission that Shui Yenyu accepted was not too difficult. Although it was to eliminate this pirate group, it did not need to be completely annihilated, but only needed to eliminate a certain number of pirates. This mission could be accepted repeatedly, and slowly, this pirate group would naturally weaken, and be eliminated. However, this pirate group was some distance from the imperial capital. If they walked, even a mountain river tier cultivator would have to walk for over 10 days. Theoretically speaking, Ling Han had offended many people, and was viewed as a thorn by the other 2 majestic empires. It was extremely unsafe for him to leave the imperial capital, or even the academy, so he really should not run so far away. However, Shui Yenyu knew that he had a spatial god tool, so even if he was chased, he could easily hide. He could not give up eating for fear of choking, and hide in the imperial capital for the rest of his life. If that happened, Ling Han would really be crippled. In the imperial capital, his achievements in this lifetime would be limited to the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and he would not even be able to break through to the sun-moon tier, what more to the heavenly body tier. In this regard, Ling Han expressed his agreement. He and Shui Yenyu agreed that after the auction ended, they would do this mission together. Oh, that's right, you also bet on me winning, right? Ling Han asked. Shui Yenyu nodded, a smile immediately appearing on her pretty face. How much? 10,000 true origin stones. Ling Han bared his teeth, and said, then it became 1 million. Ha, I earned quite a lot, 1 million true origin stones, even the left minister would have to frown to fork out such a sum, what more a fifth-rate force like the Shui clan. It's all thanks to you. Shui Yanyu smiled like a flower. Not only was Zhao Luan defeated, but he was also publicly slapped in the face, and even slapped with a shoe. This naturally became big news, and soon spread throughout the entire imperial capital. Everyone was discussing this matter, guessing what kind of reaction Great General Zhao would have. However, unexpectedly, Great General Zhao actually issued a notice, scolding Zhao Luan and severely criticizing his actions. However, he did not mention Ling Han at all. This caused everyone in the imperial capital to be astonished. Great General Zhao had always been domineering, and he only had one son, Zhao Luan. Yet, he had actually suffered such a great loss. When Ling Han learned of this, he revealed a vigilant look. Great General Zhao reprimanded Zhao Luan in a righteous manner, but he didn't mention Ling Han at all. This was clearly a way of expressing his stance. My son didn't handle this matter properly, so I criticize him. But I, Great General Zhao's son, can't be humiliated by anyone. If you don't mention Ling Han, do you think that Ling Han is destined to become a dead man? Ling Han thought to himself. If Hu Feiyun hadn't interfered in this matter, would Great General Zhao still have issued this notice? Then we will deal with soldiers with generals and water with earth. He had originally wanted to live a low-key life, waiting for his cultivation to increase before revealing his brilliance. But who asked him to wear the halo of hatred? Something always happened to him. 3 days later, Ling Han headed for the auction house. This auction house belonged to the imperial family. Thus, no one dared to falsify the auction items, and no one dared to bid recklessly or go back on their word. The auction house was very large, and the layout of the building was very similar to that of an arena. In the middle was the auction stage, and the 4 sides were platforms. Below were the ordinary seats, and from the 2nd floor onwards were private rooms. There were a total of 5 floors. Ling Han took the invitation and entered. Then, under the guidance of an attendant, he entered a private room on the 4th floor. Li Weiwei and Ji Yun were already seated inside. This private room belonged to the left minister. Only the Empress and the 9 kings had the right to sit on the 5th floor. The 4th floor belonged to the left and right ministers, the 7 generals, and so on. In short, the higher the floor the private room was on, the more esteemed its status was. You're late. Drink 3 cups of wine as punishment, Li Weiwei jeered. Ling Han sat down and tasted the wine. It was very fragrant, but he naturally completely forgot about the 3 cups of wine as punishment. Stupid blockhead, putting on airs, Li Weiwei said in displeasure. Because today was the first auction after the opening of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, it was especially grand and high class. Obviously, there would definitely be mountain river stones on auction today, and there would even be those with special attributes. However, the quantity would be very limited. Ling Han received the auction catalog and scanned it. He saw that there were a total of 12 ordinary mountain river stones and 2 special attributes. One was metal, and the other was water. What made his eyes light up was that there would be a flight god tool for sale this time. Its name was Cloud-Piercing Shuttle. It was activated by True Origin stones, and its maximum speed was 4 times that of a Sun-Moon tier at full speed. He was about to travel far, and if he had such a flight god tool, he basically wouldn't have to worry about being hunted down, unless a heavenly body tier was sent to hunt him down. But how many heavenly body tier cultivators were there on the entire Joint Peace planet? The situation in the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm was special. Otherwise, what heavenly body tier would specifically hunt down a mere mountain river tier cultivator? This cloud-piercing shuttle, he definitely had to obtain it. He continued to scroll down, and discovered that a few items were only described as extremely precious, but there was no specific introduction, which made him feel strange. Was it really good to whet people's appetite like this? He asked Li Weiwei for guidance. They had participated in more than one auction, so they should be more experienced. Generally speaking, things without specific introduction are all very precious, Li Weiwei said with a nod. But sometimes, that's not necessarily true. It could be very rare, but no one has a use for it, so it's not strange to not be auctioned. Come, he still had to save some money. What if it was useful to him? Because they were all in private rooms, he didn't know who had come. However, the private rooms on the top 2 levels belonged to those few important figures, so it was very easy to deduce. Zhao Luan is also here. Li Weiwei looked around, and humphed. This shameless guy actually has the nerve to meet others. Ling Han was also very surprised. He had just been publicly slapped, and he had appeared so quickly. This made him look at Zhao Luan in a higher light. Being able to ignore the gazes of others meant that he truly possessed the domineering aura of a king tier. A true king tier wouldn't care about what others thought, and his mind would definitely not be shaken. Zhao Luan had come, and so had Sha Yuan. The 7 generals and the descendant of the right minister had all come. Today, there is destined to be a bloodbath. Li Weiwei laughed, and said, however, no one is a match for me. She now had 3 million true origin stones in hand, and was very rich. Very soon, the auction began. Ling Han made up his mind. He definitely had to obtain the cloud-piercing shuttle, so he had to be careful about how much he spent. Though mountain river stones were good, Li Weiwei and Ji Yun would both fight over them, so he planned to give way. An elder walked onto the stage, and said smilingly, I've made everyone wait for a long time. Then let's begin today's auction. All of a sudden, the whole venue became silent. Chapter 998. The auction proceeded very quickly. Everyone had a rough idea of what items were worth. Thus, even if there was a premium, it wouldn't be too high. Not many people fought over ordinary items. Since they could buy them outside, why would they spend so much money here? However, when they encountered truly good items, it would trigger an intense fight. When the first mountain river stone appeared, it immediately triggered a small climax. It reached a high price of 7,000 true origin stones, and was won by Li Weiwei. She was about to break through to the mountain river tier soon. With a mountain river stone, she could advance to the low extreme first, and then slowly cultivate later. It would save her a lot of time. The second and third mountain river stones were also auctioned off. The ones who won were basically Li Weiwei, Ji Yun, and Shui Yanyu. Who asked them to all earn a lot of money, and now they were very rich. Ling Han waited for a long time, and finally, the cloud-piercing shuttle appeared. After a brief introduction, the elder announced the starting price. The starting price is 100,000, and each increment is no less than 5,000. It was very shocking. The starting price was 100,000. 110,000, 120,000. Because flight god tools were very rare and very practical, it triggered a fierce competition from the start. Very soon, the price was pushed up to 500,000. However, from 500,000 onwards, there were fewer people still competing. After all, this was a high price that would make most forces frown. When the price reached 700,000, there were only 3 people still competing, 730,000 going once. 730,000 going twice. The elder began to count down 800,000, Ling Han called out. 800,000, someone has bid 800,000. The elder was overjoyed. The higher the price, the more rewards he would receive. In a private room on the 3rd floor, someone raised the price, 810,000. 900,000, Ling Han said very casually. In this auction, he was definitely going to get the cloud-piercing shuttle. Thus, he didn't mind spending all his true origin stones. His competitor hesitated for a while, and then continued to bid, 910,000. 1 million, Ling Han called out a sky-high price. This time, no one else bid against him. After all, the truly great forces naturally had flying god artifacts long ago. Of course, no one would complain about having too many of such treasures, but 100 true origin stones was really the limit. After all, they would encounter a god artifact like this every few years, so why would they be in such a hurry? Hehe, next up is a mysterious treasure. The old man made a gesture and a beautiful maid immediately walked up to the stage. She was holding a tray with a small bag on it. This maidservant was very pleasing to the eye. She wore a low-cut dress that revealed a large portion of her snow-white skin. The two bulging peaks on her chest gave off an alluring outline. However, no one gave her a second glance. Instead, they were all staring at the small bag. That was the mysterious treasure. What exactly was inside it? I'm not sure if everyone has heard of a type of divine tree known as the reincarnation tree. The elder scanned the area with his gaze. What reincarnation tree? Never heard of it. I've never heard of it either. What kind of divine tree is it? Most people shook their heads. It wasn't that they were ignorant, but that this so-called divine tree was definitely too unpopular. Could it be that reincarnation tree? Someone suddenly exclaimed. This was an elder sitting on the ground floor. He had a head full of white hair, and his beard was also white. Elder Zong, do you know? Someone beside him hurriedly asked. This person's surname was Zong, and he had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Right now, he was still at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. It was almost impossible for him to break through to the sun-moon tier. However, because he had lived long enough, and because he liked to flip through all kinds of ancient books, he was also known for his extensive knowledge. The reincarnation tree is a legendary divine tree that doesn't belong to this world. It can allow our divine sense to roam freely. An instant has passed in the outside world, yet you can experience 3 lifetimes. It's incredibly miraculous. Gasp, then wouldn't there be no cultivation technique that can't be comprehended using this? Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. This was too astonishing. This kind of treasure could make any force go crazy over it. Who was so prodigal that they would even take out such a treasure to sell? Ling Han's heart also stirred. He had drunk reincarnation tea before. It was only a small sip, yet it allowed him to experience a lifetime and comprehend the mysteries of the shattering void tier in advance. Moreover, the strength of his divine sense far surpassed that of those at the same cultivation level. Tea made from the leaves of the reincarnation tree was reincarnation tea. Hehe, this bag contains the seeds of the reincarnation tree, the elder said with a smile. His words caused 1,000 ripples. Instantly, a considerable number of people stood up, their expressions filled with excitement. One had to realize that the accumulation of origin power only required time. For example, for mountain river tier cultivators, each minor level would increase their lifespan by 100,000 years. Then, they would definitely be able to increase their origin power to the pinnacle in 10,000 years at most. What was difficult was comprehension of cultivation level and the strengthening of one's divine sense. However, if they could cultivate under the reincarnation tree, one moment would be an entire lifetime. Would they still have to fear that they wouldn't be able to comprehend the mysteries of martial art and strengthen their divine sense? Snatch, snatch. Right now, there was only this thought in everyone's mind. Hehe. The elder chuckled again, and said, however, I have to explain something to everyone first. Although the seeds in this bag have been appraised and confirmed to be reincarnation trees, the legends state that the reincarnation tree doesn't belong to this world. Thus, no one knows how to plant them and make them sprout. Moreover, according to ancient records, the reincarnation tree requires 12 trillion years to grow. It's precisely because it takes a long enough time to grow that the soul of a cultivator can live through a lifetime in a short period of time. Pooh! Everyone wanted to vomit blood. Whether the seeds could sprout was still a problem, but even if they did sprout, they would still need to grow for 12 trillion years. Who could wait that long? One had to realize that heavenly body tier elites, even those at the consummate level, only had a lifespan of 40 million years. They were still far away from 100 million years, what more 12 trillion years. It was said that the ancestors planted the trees, and the descendants reaped the shade. However, once the seeds were planted, no one knew who would be able to enjoy them. Perhaps their own clan or force would have long since died out. 12 trillion years, not 1.2 billion years. Who could guarantee that their clan would be able to flourish for such a long time? With this explanation, the majority of people lost interest. The starting price is 1 million true origin stones, with an increment of 11,000, the elder continued. He sighed softly. He knew that explaining things clearly would definitely cause the value of the reincarnation tree to plummet. However, the auction house had its own rules. If they lost credibility, how could they continue to do business in the future? 1,010,000, 1,020,000. There were still people bidding. After all, this was a genuine divine tree. If they sold it after winning the bid, they might be able to make a huge profit. Bid for it, Small Tower suddenly said. Ling Han asked in his mind, it needs 12 trillion years. Do you think we can wait until that day? Chapter 1000. Ling Han didn't think much of it. He was indeed in need of true origin stones. Though he'd just earned 4 million, he only had 100,000 left after this auction. Moreover, he'd actually won quite a few items, but he really couldn't sell them anymore. He had to leave some true origin stones for cultivation, right? But no matter what, he couldn't teach the indestructible Heaven's Scroll to others. Moreover, even if he was willing, he couldn't teach the cultivation technique, because the level of the cultivation technique was too high. Sha Yuan didn't get angry when he saw that Ling Han wasn't moved. Instead, he clapped his hands, and said, Dong Yu, Mei, you two go and entertain my friend. Yes. The two girls said sweetly, and slowly walked to Ling Han's side, one on each side, and were about to lean on him. Ling Han frowned. He stretched out a hand and pushed, and the two women were pushed back by him. What? Not satisfied? Sha Yuan was slightly surprised. Dong Yu and Mei, are the stars of the fragrant inn. Not only are they as beautiful as flowers, but they also have the cultivation level of the mountain river tier. With the huge population of the chaotic star's majestic empire, the word beauty was really too common. There would definitely be 1 in 10, and exquisite beauties weren't rare either. There would be 1 in 100. It could be said that beauties were a kind of resource, but also a kind of resource that was very worthless. However, immortal-level beauties were very rare. This was a threshold, and even with the resources of the immortal realm, there were pitifully few people who could cross it. Thus, this restaurant was very unusual, actually able to bring out 2 mountain river tier beauties to drink with them. Ling Han shook his head, and said, if there's nothing else, Brother Sha, I'll take my leave first. What's the hurry? Sha Yuan hurriedly said, displeasure flashing through his eyes. A lowly commoner from a small world actually dared to call him brother, Pei. But now he wanted to obtain the cultivation technique on Ling Han, so he could only ignore it. He smiled, and said, you still don't know, right? Dong Yu and Mei, are top-notch, guaranteed to make you feel like you're walking on clouds. To think that he could even say 2 words, he was really drunk. He suddenly stood up. Even if he really had sex, he wouldn't touch 2 brothel girls. You're not satisfied with them? Sha Yuan thought that Ling Han was disdainful of the 2 women's identities. He laughed and said, Ling Han, as long as you hand over that cultivation technique, it's not like I can't even part with my 4 handmaidens. You should know that they are all genuine virgins. When he saw that Ling Han had so many beauties around him, he thought that Ling Han was a lecherous person who would definitely be charmed by beauties. The expressions of Lu Ying and the other 3 women did not change, as if they were puppets. How pathetic. Ling Han sighed in his heart, but he didn't have the ability or the time to meddle in other people's business. He immediately said, "A gentleman doesn't take someone else's good things. Goodbye." Ling Han. Sha Yuan's expression became stern, and he said, "Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have the ninth king supporting you. Don't forget, you're just an ant from a small world." "Thank you for your reminder," Ling Han said calmly. His impression of this person was extremely low. To be honest, although Zhao Luan was vengeful and very domineering, he still felt that he was much stronger than this person. The dragon had 9 sons, and each one was different. As expected, even a person like Great General Sha was no exception. If it wasn't for the fact that Sha Yuan's talent in martial art was not bad, he would really be no different from an ordinary hedonistic son. "Ling Han, this is the last warning." Sha Yuan raised his voice. Ling Han didn't pay him any attention, and swaggered off. Pang! Sha Yuan slammed the table heavily, and the wine cup toppled over. The fine wine instantly spilled onto the table. Young Master Sha. Dong Yu and Mei both leaned over, and called out coyly. If this had been any other time, Sha Yuan would definitely be all smiles, and come over to grab them one in each hand. But now, he humphed, and used his hands to block, pushing the 2 women to the ground. "Do you really think that the 9th king would fall for someone like you?" he said coldly. "Luing, keep a close eye on him. If he makes any movements, immediately report to me." "Understood." Luing half knelt and accepted the order. Ling Han walked out, shaking his head internally. In the first place, things like buying and selling were all consensual, what more when it was a secret technique? Wasn't it very normal that he wasn't willing to teach her? This kind of young master of a noble family had probably never been rejected before in his life, and he couldn't tolerate others saying no, either. After returning to the academy, Ling Han immediately entered into the Black Tower. "Small tower, how do I plant it?" He drew out the reincarnation seed. "I'll first clear out a place." Small Tower's voice was slightly cautious, completely different from before. This let Ling Han know that even for Small Tower, this reincarnation tree was still extremely valuable. Hung, long, long. Small Tower was the true ruler of the Black Tower. Under its control, a piece of land was cleared out, and it was filled with an aura of spirituality. One had to realize that no matter what Ling Han had planted before, Small Tower had always been indifferent, but now, it actually personally cleared out a place for planting. It was clear how important it was. "Your luck is really nature-defying. The reincarnation tree is a supreme precious treasure," Small Tower said. "Strange, why would there be a reincarnation seed in this place?" Ling Han opened the pouch, and saw that there was a seed that was only the size of a broad bean inside. However, there were multiple rings on its body, and if he counted them carefully, he would find that there was no end to them. It was impossible to count them all. In that instant, even Ling Han felt as if his spirit was exhausted, and a layer of sweat actually appeared on his forehead. No wonder even with the level of martial art on the Joint Peace Planet, they could identify that this was a reincarnation seed. This was indeed very strange, and could not be faked no matter what. "Plant it," Small Tower said. Ling Han threw the seed into the newly cleared land, and Small Tower used its mystical power on this piece of land. Suddenly, the whole piece of land was shining, colorful and incredibly wondrous. "All right, now we just have to wait patiently," Small Tower said, its voice revealing a sense of exhaustion. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Thank you for your hard work." He exited the Black Tower, and began to fiddle with the cloud-piercing shuttle. Before setting out, he naturally had to know how to use this thing. The cloud-piercing shuttle was only about 3 meters long, and had a streamlined shape. Its entire body was silvery white, just like a silver shuttle. Thus, the space inside was naturally not big, and could only seat 2 people side by side. There were also only 2 rows in front and behind. For Ling Han, this was not a problem. He had the Black Tower, which meant that he had unlimited space. After a while, he understood how to use this thing. He reported to the academy that he was going to go out on a mission. This was a necessary procedure. Furthermore, Ling Han still had another identity, and that was the ruler of the Great Ling Empire. He was currently a hostage, and if he wanted to leave the imperial capital, he would have to first obtain approval. Otherwise, this would be seen as a provocation toward the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. 2 days later, he obtained the approval of the academy. Chapter 1001. When Ling Han reported to the academy for the record, all the forces in the imperial capital had received this news. What, this guy actually left the academy at this time, and even wants to leave the imperial capital. Is he seeking death? How could the Luo clan and Zhao clan let go of this hatred? Once he leaves the imperial capital, he'll definitely die. Indeed, no matter how talented he is, he's only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. His battle prowess definitely can't surpass the consummate level. There are too many people that can suppress him. Does he think he can have nothing to fear with the 9th King's support? Though he's a genius, he's too stupid. Talent in martial art has nothing to do with one's conduct. It's fine not to have such a genius. He'll only cause trouble, and he doesn't know when to stop. All of a sudden, the major forces that originally wanted to recruit Ling Han all chose to retreat. At first, they had stopped and watched. After all, Ling Han had offended Zhao Luan, and if they recruited Ling Han, they would risk offending the Zhao clan. But now, Ling Han was acting so recklessly, which made them all shake their heads. If they recruited Ling Han back, it was entirely possible that he would bring upon himself a great calamity before he could even grow up and destroy their own clan. Luo clan. This brat actually ran out of the imperial capital. Luo Hongdao was stunned at first. He couldn't believe such a stupid action. But then he laughed loudly, and said, then he really is seeking death. Go, arrange for someone to kill him. The people of the Dark Night Hall are too unreliable. They haven't killed a minor character in the Mountain River tier after so long. Since he wants to run out, then clean up the matter, and it has nothing to do with us. Ha, it's 100,000 true origin stones, why give it away for nothing? Most importantly, retrieve the Crimson Ground locking net. The clan paid a huge price for it, so it definitely can't fall into the hands of others. Zhao Luan sat boldly, listening to Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong's reports. He smiled coldly, and said, Father secretly obtained a batch of Mountain River stones for me, as well as some 9 Darkness Divine pills. I'm going into seclusion, and when I come out, I'll be at the peak stage of the consummate level. At that time, I will break through to the Sun Moon tier and become the youngest elite of the Sun Moon tier in the history of this empire. So, the mission to kill the ant will be given to you. Yes, young master, Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong both half-knelt on the ground and respectfully accepted the order. Even though Zhao Luan had lost a lot of face, they didn't dare to lose the slightest bit of respect, because they all knew that it wasn't that Zhao Luan was inferior to Ling Han. They naturally preferred Zhao Luan. One was the son of a great general, while the other was an ant from a small world. There was even a tiny bit of comparison. The 9th king was young, and this was the age when her temperament was fickle. She had a favorable impression of Ling Han now, but it did not mean that she would always have it in the future. No matter what, Zhao Luan was still the only son of great General Zhao, right? They were all stunned. Zhao Luan was courageous after experiencing humiliation. If he could really break through to the Sun Moon tier in a short time, he would definitely become the most dazzling star in the entire Chaotic Star's majestic empire. This step was too difficult to cross. In the entire Chaotic Star's majestic empire, at least 90% of immortal level elites were in the Mountain River tier, but those that could ultimately break through to the Sun Moon tier were less than 1 in 10,000. Zhao Luan was not even 1,000 years old now, and just thinking about it made their scalps numb. How bright was his future? The two of them were both astonished. Though their talent was slightly inferior to Zhao Luan's, they were still super geniuses who were above 2 stars and close to 3 stars. In comparison, the gap in cultivation level was obvious. They were now already over 20,000 years old, yet were only in the high extreme. This was because the cultivation resources that they had obtained were far inferior to Zhao Luan's, which further magnified the advantage of Zhao Luan's talent. Though that ant is only in the medium extreme, he has grasped a spiritual secret technique. Take these 2 jade seals, they can block about 100 spiritual attacks. Zhao Luan tossed out 2 jade seals. Thank you, young master. Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong were overjoyed. Among the divine artifacts, soul-type secret treasures were the rarest, and there were even fewer offensive ones. Most of them were defensive. But even so, defensive spiritual treasures were still incredibly valuable because only great elites of the heavenly body tier could create them. Zhao Luan thought for a moment, but still felt that he was not confident enough, so he retrieved a treasured sword and handed it over, saying, "I'll bestow this purple moonwool sword to you. There are 9 divine patterns inscribed by my father on it, and after activating it, you can unleash the battle prowess of the consummate level of the mountain river tier." At first, Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong were still slightly worried. After all, Ling Han had the Crimson Ground locking net, which could make one of them lose their battle prowess and instantly kill him. But with this god tool, their confidence was greatly boosted. So what if it was the Crimson Ground locking net? They would directly shatter it. "Yes, we will definitely not disappoint young master," they replied loudly. Shui Yenyu came to find him, and Ling Han left the imperial capital with her. After exiting the city gates, Ling Han gazed at the ancient city in the distance, a myriad of thoughts running through his mind. In this imperial capital, though he appeared normal, there was an indescribable pressure that kept reminding him that he was a hostage. And now that he had finally left, he felt an indescribable sense of relief all over his body. Though he had left once before, that was different. At that time, he had Ding Li and with him, and it was like a prisoner going out for a breather. He had to and could only go to the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, and it was not up to him to decide whether to leave or stop. "Wife, now that it's just the 2 of us, can you give me a hot kiss or something?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him, and said, "Now that we've left the imperial capital, every step is dangerous. Can't you be a little more serious?" "All right, serious, serious." Ling Han drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle, and said, "Wife, please." Shui Yenyu did not correct his way of addressing her. This guy's skin was thicker than the city walls, and she was also enjoying it a little. They entered the cloud-piercing shuttle, and Ling Han activated the god tool. Instantly, this beautiful shuttle immediately broke through the air, its speed astonishingly fast. When it was only a small black dot in the sky, they finally heard the sound of a sonic boom. It was extremely difficult to break through the speed of sound in the immortal realm. Even Sun-Moon tier elites could rarely achieve this. When the shuttle broke through the air, the monsters that followed behind all humphed loudly. "No rush, their target is definitely the Star Sea. We'll snipe them when we get there." The shuttle broke through the air, its speed incredibly fast. Shui Yenyu looked steadily forward, but her pretty face became redder and redder. Finally, she could not help but scold, "If you dare to touch me again, I'll chop it off." Ling Han chuckled, but did not stop. Instead, he pulled Shui Yenyu's whole body into his embrace, and said, "Wife, I like how you're tough on the outside but soft on the inside. You say no, but your body is very honest." "Pervert." Shui Yenyu scolded with a red face. "You should learn some new words. You keep saying these 2 words over and over again. I'm already tired of hearing it." "Woo." Shui Yenyu was just about to retort, but Ling Han pressed his lips against hers, and the words that reached her mouth instantly turned into enchanting moans. Her jade arms involuntarily wrapped around Ling Han's neck, her eyes misty like water. Chapter 1002. The flying shuttle danced in the air, heading west. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were a single man and woman, and they were also dry wood and hot fire, so it was inevitable for them to be lovey-dovey and cuddle. However, both of them restrained themselves, and didn't break through to the last hurdle. Even with a flying god tool, they still spent 9 days to reach the Star Sea. The Star Sea was an inland sea. Legend had it that a long time ago, this was a plain, and one day, a star fell from the sky and crashed into this place, forming a vast sea. It was speculated that this was a shattered piece of the star. Thus, exotic buildings could be seen at the bottom of the sea from time to time, but basically none of them were intact. Under the terrifying impact, how could they still be intact? However, this was a piece of a continent, after all. There was a large amount of godly metal scattered in the sea, and the quality was relatively high. This also attracted many people to search here. If they could find a piece of high-level godly metal, they would be rich. If they could find a high-level god tool, then the value would be even more astonishing. Actually, it was not just godly metal and god tools. It was possible to find lost cultivation techniques, spirit medicine seeds, and so on here. It was said that people had even found high-level puppets here, and their battle prowess was astonishing. In short, this sea was a treasure trove. Precisely because of this, pirates were bred here, and they specialized in robbing these people who came to try their luck. When they reached the edge of the sea, Ling Han stopped the flying shuttle. This sea was very strange, and had a great restriction on flying god tools. It would produce an extremely strong gravity, causing flying god tools to sink to the bottom. It was as if this fallen piece of the star still had its own gravity, and was incredibly strong. Even ordinary ships could not sail here, and would sink at any moment. If one wanted to sail on this sea, they had to use the bones and skins of demonic beasts native to this sea to create a buoyancy that could resist the gravity. Because these demonic beasts had lived in this sea for countless years, their bodies had evolved, and they had become accustomed to this gravity. The pirates that Ling Han and Shui Yenyu wanted to eliminate were naturally in the sea, but they did not know which island their nest was on. This group of pirates was very careful, and had never exposed the location of their nest, making it very difficult to eliminate them. Fortunately, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu did not need to go deep alone, and they could eliminate this group of pirates with their own strength. Their plan was very simple. They would join a fleet, and when the pirates came to rob them, they would take the chance to attack. Anyway, their mission was to eliminate pirates, as long as there were enough of them. At the same time, we can also try our luck. Someone once found level 10 godly metal here, Shui Yenyu said. Ling Han had already heard Shui Yenyu introduce the situation of the Star Sea on the way here. He immediately nodded with a smile, and said, "My luck has always been good." He was not boasting. Because he came by opening the sky, and received the blessing of heaven, and his luck was indeed better than ordinary people. Don't underestimate things like luck. When he was still in the lower realm, Xianyuan Ziguang's luck was nature-defying. When he went out, he would trip over a spirit tool, and when he jumped off a cliff, he could obtain a supreme inheritance. Ling Han's luck wasn't as heaven-defying as Xianyuan Ziguang's, but he definitely belonged to the category of people who were enveloped by luck. Shui Yenyu nodded. She had done considerable research on small worlds, and knew that the masters of heaven creation would receive generous blessings from heaven and earth, including an increase in their power, a change in their physique, and an influx of fortune. "You should listen to me," she said as she put away the cloud-piercing shuttle. As Ling Han put away the cloud-piercing shuttle, he smiled, and said, "A husband should be the wife's guide. You should have listened to me anyway." "Damn pervert." Shui Yenyu humphed. "I just added the word, stinky, and you think it's something new." Ling Han asked with a smile. Let's go. Shui Yenyu took the lead. Their target was the Tyrant Axe Pier. Ships set sail here regularly. Of course, they had to pay a considerable fee. After all, they had the exclusive ships here. The pier was not far, and the two of them soon arrived. Because there were a lot of people going out to sea, this place was an important supply station. Thus, a small town had developed around this dock. There were inns, brothels, and casinos. The enjoyment here was not inferior to that of a big city like the imperial capital. But a town was a town. It was not more than 5 kilometers wide, and 3 sides were built with high walls. There were divine patterns on the walls, so the defense was obviously very strong. The other side was the sea. There were over a dozen ships of various sizes docked there. In the middle of the town, there was a flag with a bloody axe drawn on it. It was the symbol of this town. When Ling Han and Shui Yenyu arrived at the entrance of the town, they were immediately stopped. 1 true origin stone for each person. There were a total of 5 people on the other side, and they all crossed their arms over their chests. After sweeping their eyes over Ling Han and Shui Yenyu, they finally fixed their eyes on Shui Yenyu. They looked her up and down, and it was as if they wanted to strip her clean with their gazes. Ling Han moved slightly to block Shui Yenyu behind him, and said, I've never heard that we have to pay to enter the Tyrant Axe Pier. Now you've heard about it, a strong man in white said. However, if the beauty behind you gives us a kiss, we only need to pay 1 true origin stone, another brawny man said with a smile, his face full of lust. Hee hee, if you're willing to give me a kiss, I'm willing to pay 1 true origin stone. Ha 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 ha. The 5 people all laughed loudly. In the imperial capital, although there were descendants of nobles like Zhao Luan, Sha Yuan, and Luo Ba, who were very domineering in their conduct, they were, after all, under the feet of the emperor. No matter how overboard they were only at the level of profligate young masters. Here, however, the weak were prey to the strong, and the ugliness of human nature was magnified to the extreme. In the world of cultivators, the fist was king, and strength was venerated. Young lady, you're really beautiful. I didn't think that there would be such a beauty in such a remote place. Come, give me a smile. A brawny man couldn't help but reach out to push Ling Han aside and tease Shui Yenyu. Ling Han's expression darkened. Give me a smile, was his line, all right? Now, he actually had to share this famous line with a ruffian. Wasn't this lowering his status? He reached out and grabbed the brawny man's wrist and said, You dare to tease even my wife, how dare you? Fuck, you actually dare to retaliate. The brawny man was stunned, and suddenly struggled, only to find that his hand seemed to be clamped by iron pincers, and he couldn't move at all. His ferocious nature flared up, and his other hand instantly lashed out at Ling Han. Humph! Ling Han shook his hand, and pa, the sound of bones breaking rang out. The brawny man's entire arm was like a noodle, drooping limply. All the bones in his arm had already been shattered into pieces. Ah! The brawny man was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses, and suddenly screamed in pain. How dare you, you actually dare to injure a member of our Black 5 gang. The other 4 brawny men flew into a rage, and all drew their weapons, surrounding Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. Chapter 1004. Beauties were the most common resource on Joint Peace Planet. As long as one reached the mountain river tier, it was really too easy to marry a beauty. However, beauties were also divided into different levels. Different status would cause different changes in the attractiveness of beauties. How could the feeling of conquest be the same for a girl from a humble family and a princess of the imperial family? But for someone like Shui Yenyu, not only was she beautiful and moving, she also had a natural enchanting temperament. Every move she made was flirtatious, causing others to fall head over heels for her. Added with her immortal level cultivation, she naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. Such a seductive beauty, who wouldn't be moved? What a beautiful girl. That butt is round and perky, I really want to go up and touch it. Hee hee, her breasts are also quite large. I probably can't even hold them with one hand. Many people were eating in the main hall, and some were already spewing obscenities. Ling Han's eyes turned cold, and he stared at one of them. Brat, what? It was a middle-aged man about 40 years old, with a sturdy figure and a fierce-looking face. However, he was actually wearing a bright red robe, appearing very out of place. He pointed at Ling Han and said, "Again, I'll beat you to death." Ling Han. Shui Yenyu grabbed him, not wanting him to use force here. Ling Han shook his head, pulled her hand away, and then walked towards the middle-aged man. Brat, are you angry because of a beauty? The middle-aged man smirked, and said, which clan's spoiled brat are you from, allowing you to obtain such a beauty? TSK, without such a clan, are you worthy? He was full of jealousy, and even his eyes were slightly red. He was in the high extreme of the mountain river tier, but didn't have Ling Han's luck with women at all. You've lived so many years on a dog's body, speaking without any restraint. What's the use of having this mouth? Ling Han strode over, his expression cold. Since he and Shui Yenyu were going to stay here for 2 days, if he didn't establish his dominance, these people would inevitably gossip and take advantage of Shui Yenyu. What a picky mouth, sneered the middle-aged man. Young man, I'll teach you a lesson today. Once you leave your family, you're nothing. The two of them drew their swords, ready to fight at any moment. However, the others were all laughing and joking at the side. This matter did not concern them, so naturally, no one would step forward. The innkeeper didn't stop them. His job was only to prevent outsiders from causing trouble. Since these two people wanted to fight, it didn't matter if they were beaten to death. Of course, if the middle-aged man or Ling Han asked for help, they would intervene and stop the battle. Ling Han had already walked over. He was angry, and his aura was released lightly. There was a type of intimidating might. This was because his divine sense was far stronger than that of ordinary cultivators at the medium extreme, and it had been tempered countless times by the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so it was naturally like a god tool. You're courting death. The middle-aged man immediately sent a slap towards Ling Han's head. Although he said that he wanted to teach Ling Han a lesson, his first move was to kill him. Anyone who believed his words would be too naive. Ling Han snorted and also swung out his palm to meet the middle-aged man's palm. Pa! The two palms collided with each other. Immediately, a loud sound rang out, and a ripple that could be seen with the naked eye burst forth from their palms, instantly knocking over a few nearby tables. Ah! The middle-aged man screamed in pain. He felt as if his palm had struck godly metal, shaking his hand to the point that the bones in his hand were about to crack. It was indescribably painful. He looked at Ling Han in shock. He couldn't believe that this young man who was only at the medium extreme actually possessed such great power. He was at the early stage of the high extreme. He took a step back, clenched his right hand into a fist, and swung it at Ling Han. Ling Han also clenched his fist, and their fists collided. Peng, peng, peng. Instantly, the middle-aged man's figure swayed, and he stumbled 7 steps back, crashing into the table behind him. Under the impact of his protective power, he directly turned into splinters of wood. He still didn't stop his retreat, but the person sitting on the other side stretched out a hand and pushed, finally stopping him. Hiss! He bared his teeth, raised his hand, and saw that his fist had actually caved in. Obviously, his bones had definitely been broken. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a wound. What the hell, how could there be such a physique? The middle-aged man was both shocked and furious. Cultivators were most afraid of close combat, and he was taking advantage of the fact that Ling Han's cultivation level was lower than his. He never thought that in 2 exchanges, he would suffer losses consecutively, causing him to be filled with regret. This brat should have cultivated his physique, which was why his defense was so terrifying. He was even more certain of Ling Han's identity. He must be the heir of some great clan, which was why he had so many resources to temper his physique. It should be known that the price needed to raise one's physique to the immortal level was astonishingly high. One had to bathe in precious godly medicine every day, day after day, and only after countless years could one achieve it. Otherwise, everyone knew that a strong physique was very beneficial, so why were there so few people who cultivated immortal bodies? It wasn't that they didn't want to, but that they couldn't do it at all. The middle-aged man was mad with jealousy. This young man's cultivation level was lower than his, yet he had the physique that he yearned for day and night. The woman that made his heart itch and want to pounce on her was all because of his background, and that he had a good clan. Die, he shouted loudly. When, a sound wave came from his mouth, and actually took on a human figure, waving a staff, and swinging it at Ling Han's head. He had finally learned his lesson, and this strike would increase the distance between them before fighting it out with Ling Han. A sound wave type martial arts technique. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This type of martial arts technique was very rare, and he had never thought that he would actually encounter it when he had just arrived here. But no matter what kind of martial arts technique it was, it ultimately depended on the strength of the user, so he was naturally unafraid. Shio, he charged over, intending to directly attack the root of the problem. The human figure formed by the sound wave smashed down, but Ling Han only raised a hand, and received the staff. Peng, his figure paused slightly, but the might of this staff was also dispersed by him. He lowered his arm, and saw that his clothes had been torn, and there was also a faint mark left on his skin. After all, he was in the high extreme, and could not be underestimated. He only sighed ruefully, but it caused the bystanders to be incredibly shocked. Hey, this brat is only in the medium extreme, yet is able to face Lu Qiwei, who is in the early stage of the high extreme, head-on, and even cause Lu Qiwei to suffer a small loss. This strength is really a bit shocking. At least a one-star genius. His physique is even more shocking. He must be a disciple of a great clan, and has refined his body with various godly medicines since he was young. Their thoughts were more or less the same as the middle-aged man, Lu Qiwei. They all firmly believed that Ling Han was a disciple of a great clan, and that was why he had such a strong physique. In fact, it was because of this that he had become a one-star genius. Those who worked hard here were basically all lone cultivators, and did not have very good backgrounds. Instantly, they were filled with jealousy towards Ling Han. Chapter 1005. Die. As Lu Qiwei kept moving, he opened his mouth and roared repeatedly. Wave after wave of sound waves blasted out, and all of them took human form, striking at Ling Han with his staff. Peng, one staff strike followed another. Though this couldn't cause any damage to Ling Han, it was an elite in the high extreme attacking after all, forcibly blocking Ling Han's advance and preventing him from getting close. Ha, young man, your good birth only allows your foundation to surpass others, but battle still requires experience. Lu Qiwei laughed loudly. I've been fighting for 210,000 years, how can you compare to me? Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. For someone who came from a small world, he was used to the limit of a normal person's lifespan. Even shattering void tier elites could only live for about 1,000 years. Even if he himself had already leaped into the medium extreme, he still didn't put himself in the same position. His limit of lifespan had already reached 200,000 years, and from this aspect, his relative age was really frighteningly young. He smiled faintly, and said, "Is that so? I'll smash that pretty boy face of yours, and see if you can still show such a smile." Lu Qiwei took a deep breath, and suddenly roared. Wang, this time, the humanoid sound wave that appeared was more than 3 times larger, and also held a sharp sword. The sound wave person whistled over, and stabbed with the sword, directly stabbing at Ling Han's face. Ling Han humphed, stretched out his right hand, and pressed down lightly. Wang, the divine patterns of gravity were activated, and this sound wave person's figure instantly fell, his movements completely distorted. Pang! The sound wave person's sword directly struck the ground, instantly cutting a large hole in the wooden floor. Dust filled the air, causing many people to wave their hands to block the invasion of the dust. However, there were also a few people who sat upright and did not move. The dust floated up, but was blocked by an endless barrier, unable to advance an inch. These people seemed ordinary, but if one looked closely, they would discover that a terrifying aura was hidden in their bodies. Once it exploded, it could easily crush any mountain river tier cultivator into dust. They were elites of the Sun-Moon tier. What? Lu Qiwei was shocked. That attack just now was his ultimate move, but it was actually dissolved by Ling Han with a raise of his hand. This was something he could not accept. Ling Han gave chase and punched out. Although Lu Qiwei was shocked, he wouldn't just wait helplessly for death. He hurriedly retreated while opening his mouth to spit out a sound wave attack. However, Ling Han had already made his move. What threat could these sound waves pose? As the divine runes of gravity were activated, the sound waves were compressed and even directly shattered. One had to realize that special Pearl Mountain River stones were precious treasures, and it was also extremely difficult to obtain them. How could their might be simple? Ling Han then used the divine runes of gravity to affect Lu Qiwei's movement technique, instantly closing the distance between the two of them. He then punched out heavily. Lu Qiwei stretched out a hand to parry, but under the influence of gravity, his move was a beat too slow. Ling Han's punch forcefully penetrated and landed heavily on his face. Suddenly, the muscles on his face rippled, and then split open with a paw. He was sent flying, and just as he was about to crash into a pillar, he saw someone leap over and grab him. Otherwise, if the pillar was broken, this building could possibly collapse. Everyone looked at Lu Qiwei, and couldn't help but be shocked. Half of his face had been forcefully destroyed, and one could clearly see the broken bones and rotten flesh. It was extremely bloody. Enough, if you continue fighting, someone will really die. The one who grabbed Lu Qiwei was an old man with a white beard. Just now, no one had noticed where he was at all, but he had suddenly appeared. He was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, and at this moment, his aura was completely revealed. There was a complete sun and moon behind him, showing that he was in existence at the peak stage of the low extreme. Elder Qian. Greetings, Elder Qian. Many people bowed respectfully. This old man's surname was Qian, and his name was Yi. He was a senior elder of the Great Chariot Gang. Though he looked benevolent, he was a famous killer. He was known for his cruel methods, and the number of people who had died at his hands was innumerable. Ling Han didn't follow up with another attack. He only wanted to establish his might, so that others wouldn't speak vulgarly of Shui Yanyu again. He nodded slightly at Qian Yi, then walked to the counter, and said, "We want to stay in the inn." "One room or 2 rooms?" the shopkeeper asked. "1 room. 2 rooms." The first sentence was said by Ling Han, but Shui Yanyu hurriedly corrected him. "1 room." Ling Han hugged Shui Yanyu, causing her delicate body to go limp. The retort that was about to come out of her mouth also turned into the whites of her eyes, electrifying her to the point of melting. The accommodation fee of this inn is 1 true origin stone per day. During your stay in the inn, your safety is guaranteed. Of course, if you want to fight with others, then that's another matter. Please pay 10 days rent in advance. If you don't stay for the full period, the balance will not be refunded. If you want to continue staying after 10 days, then you'll have to pay another 10, the shopkeeper said. So dark. This place would leave once every 3 days. Ordinary people would only stay for 2 or 3 days, but he had to pay the rent every 10 days, and there was no refund. Ling Han fished out 10 true origin stones and handed them over. This was small money to him, and he really didn't care. "Sir, this lowly one will lead the way for you," a waiter said from the side. He led Ling Han and Shui Yenyu up the stairs. There were a total of 5 floors, and they came to the 4th floor. The room was definitely not very luxurious or elegant, but the purpose of staying in an inn was for safety. Staying here was equivalent to having the protection of the Great Chariot Gang. Unless the Yang clan asked for them, this place was absolutely safe. "Do the two of you plan to rest for a while, or go downstairs to eat?" the waiter asked. "Rest. All right, then this lowly one will not disturb the two of you." The waiter retreated, and closed the door. Suddenly, there were only the two of them left in the room. Shui Yenyu saw Ling Han lean over, and hurriedly put on a wary expression, saying, "Don't do anything rash." Ling Han laughed, and said, "Pfft, what is your head full of?" He switched to using his divine sense, and said, "Don't you know that I have a spatial god tool? I'll bring you in to see it now." Shui Yenyu instantly looked tempted. Spatial god tool, a god tool that only existed in legends. Even the Empress couldn't possibly possess it. "Don't resist my divine sense," Ling Han said. Shui Yenyu had just nodded, yet unexpectedly, Ling Han kissed her, causing her to release a moan. She hurriedly stretched out her hands to push him away, but her hands became weaker and weaker, and she was completely immersed in Ling Han's passionate kiss. Being kissed so flustered that her mind was naturally distracted, and she was easily drawn into the Black Tower by Ling Han. She was still unaware, and it was only when Ling Han released her mouth that she came back to her senses after a long while. She said in annoyance, "Damn pervert, you're acting shameless again." She hadn't even said the word shameless when she gaped and was tongue-tied, stunned by the scene before her eyes. Chapter 1006. This was a vast and boundless world. There were large fields of medicine, green mountains and clear waters, spiritual birds and cranes, and celestial mist lingering. It was like a paradise in the mortal world. Shui Yenyu received a huge shock. She had never seen a spatial god tool before. Were they all so big? This was already not something that could be described with the word space, but rather a whole world. Ling Han smiled faintly, and asked, "Are you satisfied with this place?" Shui Yenyu nodded repeatedly, her pretty face filled with pleasant surprise. But she was immediately shocked, and asked, "Then if we all enter here, will the spatial god tool be discovered by others?" "No." Ling Han smiled and shook his head. "I call this the Black Tower because its outer appearance is a 9-story black tower, but only I can reach it because it is too small, like a mustard seed. Thus, even if I also enter, no one can possibly discover this thing that is even smaller than a speck of dust." Shui Yenyu believed this because she had seen Ling Han suddenly disappear before, and no matter how she searched, she could not find him. "Then with this treasure, won't we be in an invincible position?" she asked in pleasant surprise. "Wife is right." Ling Han hugged her without reservation. Just now, he really did not enjoy kissing her to his heart's content. "Damn pervert." Shui Yenyu murmured softly, but did not struggle too strongly. Seeing such a precious treasure, her heart was also surging, and there was a kind of passion rippling in her. The two of them were entangled, and only stopped when they were about to go off the rails. "I'll take you to something good." Ling Han led Shui Yenyu to the place where the reincarnation tree was planted. Shui Yenyu's eyes widened. "Is it this empty space?" No. "Not long after, a reincarnation tree will grow here," Ling Han said proudly. Shui Yenyu faltered, and said, "It's the reincarnation seed that you obtained at the auction previously. But don't you know, it needs 12 trillion years to truly grow." Don't worry, it definitely won't wait until your teeth all fall out." Ling Han laughed heartily and pinched her pretty face. "In 3 years at most, the reincarnation tree will be able to display its miraculous effects. At that time, if you cultivate here, one day will be equivalent to a lifetime. Shui Yenyu was a little doubtful. After all, it had said that it would take 12 trillion years for it to grow, but the problem was, did it have a spatial god tool? Since they even had such a divine weapon, it was not impossible for them to have some unimaginable abilities. She chose to believe in Ling Han. As expected, you are a person with great fortune, Shui Yenyu said with a nod. Being able to split open the sky and come here, how could he be an ordinary person? Ling Han chuckled and said, of course. Otherwise, why would there be a beautiful enchantress like you throwing herself into my arms? Shui Yenyu was still a little shy, and was not used to being teased by Ling Han. Her pretty face was red as she asked, who threw herself into my arms? Her almond-shaped eyes were like water, and they were so gentle and charming that they could melt anyone's heart. You damn pervert. She recalled the past when Ling Han had peeped on her when she was bathing, and couldn't help but be annoyed. She raised her fist and swung it at Ling Han. How could this little bit of strength be taken seriously by Ling Han? With a pounce, he pounced on this enchanting enchantress. The two of them rolled on the grass, and very soon, they were kissing again. The night passed, and early the next morning, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu went downstairs to eat breakfast. Though she hadn't really done it with Ling Han last night, the two of them had slept in each other's arms, so intimate that they were no different from husband and wife. This caused her pretty face to blush the entire time, as if dyed with a rosy glow, and she was astonishingly beautiful. Thus, when she walked down the stairs like this, she instantly attracted countless gazes. Quite a few of them even spat, secretly thinking that Ling Han must have been really lucky in his last life to actually be able to spend the night with such an alluring beauty. However, if it were them, why would they still come out when they had such a beautiful enchantress? It would be enough for them to just shut their doors and have fun every day. Because Ling Han had established his dominance yesterday, no one dared to say anything frivolous now. However, there were still many people who used their eyes to take advantage of Shui Yenyu, fiercely glaring at her pretty face, chest, buttocks, and long legs. It was as if they wished for hands to grow out of their eyes. After cultivating to the immortal level, one's body would completely break away from that of a mortal, and would no longer need things like eating and drinking. As long as there was spiritual qi that could be absorbed, then one would not starve to death or die of thirst, and could live normally until their lifespan dried up. However, cultivators definitely didn't cultivate for the sake of suffering. Just like how sleeping was not necessary, everyone still habitually slept because it was beneficial to the body. Meanwhile, eating and drinking was to satisfy the desire for good food. This was a kind of enjoyment. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu each ordered a set of breakfast. It was very simple, only a few steamed buns and a plate of side dishes. Thankfully, this was provided for free. Otherwise, if they had to charge a few true origin stones, then everyone would be hopping mad. A shop assistant suddenly rushed over, and said with a terrified expression, "Not good, many people from the Black Five gang are charging over." The five great forces often fought, and there would be some casualties every time. Perhaps it would happen to them this time. What? Many shop assistants immediately drew their weapons, and rushed out of the shop. The two great forces were fighting for territory, and the smell of gunpowder had been especially strong recently. Fierce battles would break out every few days. Thus, the Great Chariot Gang was also long prepared, and immediately entered into battle mode. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, and he and Shui Yenyu also walked to the entrance to join in the fun. There were over a dozen people on the street. They were all dressed in black, and all of them exuded a savage aura. However, they should all be in the Mountain River tier, and none of them had reached the Sun Moon tier. This was natural. The Sun Moon tier, even if they were in the low extreme, could be called an elite in the imperial capital, and could enter the Scarlet Heaven Academy to take up the position of an elder. In any clan, they would be a mainstay. Tyrant Axe Pier was a small place, after all, so how could they send out Sun Moon tier elites for a random fight? If they really did send out such elites, it meant that they were serious, and wanted to fight to the death. Obviously, the 5 great forces would definitely not take this step. Otherwise, if they fought to the death, or if they won a Pyrrhic victory, it would only benefit others. The remaining 3 gangs would definitely join forces to suppress them, and divide the profits. The people of the Black 5 gang stopped at the entrance of the inn because the people of the Great Chariot gang had already gone out to meet them, not allowing them to take another step in. What are the bastards of the Black 5 gang doing here? Get lost. Get lost, or I'll beat you up. The people of the Great Chariot gang took the initiative to provoke them, because the other party was bullying into their territory. In the Black 5 gang, the crowd parted, and a young man walked out. He was not dressed in black, but rather in a flashy embroidered robe, like a colorful butterfly. His appearance was not bad, though. His skin was soft and tender, his lips red, and his teeth white. He was even holding a folding fan in his hand. Pa, this young man opened the folding fan, waved it lightly, and said, "Yesterday, someone beat up a disciple of my Black 5 gang. Today, I have specially come to find this person. Unrelated people, get lost." Chapter 1008. Ling Han wasn't avoiding Jiang Anyun, so he didn't set sail. Every 3 days, a ship would set sail from the Tyrant Axe Pier. However, there were differences in the size of the ship. For example, the ship this time was a large ship. Not only could it accommodate more people, but it was also equipped with powerful guards. There were elites at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier overseeing it, so it was the safest. However, the problem was that Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were here to exterminate the pirates. The stronger the elites on the ship, the lower the chances of being robbed by the pirates. That naturally wouldn't do. Thus, they had to wait for a small ship that only had elites at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier overseeing it. That way, the chances of them attracting pirates would be much higher. 3 days later, it was still a large ship. After another 3 days, a small ship would set sail. After learning the specific situation, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu began to cultivate in the Black Tower. Shui Yenyu cultivated her martial arts techniques, while Ling Han studied the pill recipes he had just obtained. Although there were only 4 of them, they were level 1 to level 4 divine pills. They were perfect for progressing step by step. Previously, Ling Han had either been traveling or cultivating, so he hadn't had the time to study pill recipes. He was the Alchemy Emperor, and even in the small world in his last life, he had concocted demigod pills. He wasn't far from becoming a divine-grade alchemist. There are 2 most important aspects in alchemy. The first is to control the fire, and the second is to extract the divine patterns from the medicinal ingredients and interweave them. These 2 aspects, in the end, are all about control and the use of one's divine sense. After consuming the reincarnation tea, my divine sense is already far stronger than ordinary cultivators at the medium extreme. In fact, it can even rival the consummate level. After being tempered by the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, the toughness of my divine sense is unparalleled among those at the same cultivation level. In other words, in terms of innate conditions, I'm far superior to others. In terms of alchemy techniques, there's no difference between divine grade and ordinary spirit medicines. It's just the extreme temperature of the flames and the interweaving of the divine patterns that far surpass heaven-grade spirit medicines. Then let's begin. He began to try to concoct the heavenly chi pill. This was a level 1 godly medicine that could speed up the accumulation of origin power at the Mountain River tier. There were many divine pills with such effects, but the heavenly chi pill was definitely one of the best. It should be known that every medicine was 30% poisonous, and no medicinal pill could be eaten as a meal. Thus, if one could only eat 10 medicinal pills in a month, then the better the effect, the more precious it would be. Failure, failure, failure. After all, it was a divine pill. Ling Han felt like he had become a beginner in alchemy, and his cauldrons kept exploding. However, he was not discouraged at all, because after every failure, he made obvious progress. Unfortunately, another 6 days passed. When they could go out to sea, Ling Han still did not succeed. After a dozen more times, I think I should be able to succeed. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu exited the Black Tower and headed towards the pier. Not long after they arrived, they saw people coming one after another, and some of them knew each other. There was naturally no need to mention Jiang Anyun. He led 10 Mountain River Tier's subordinates, and his shifty eyes were staring at Shui Yenyu as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. Shui Yenyu whispered into his ear, "Those are members of the Luo clan, Luo Yu, Luo Wu, and Luo Senyun." Luo Senyun is an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, and he should have broken through over 30,000 years ago. It's extremely likely that he's reached the peak stage of the low extreme now. She pointed in another direction, and said to Ling Han, "And over there, there's Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong, the other 2 followers of Zhao Luan. They've reached the high extreme of the Mountain River tier a long time ago, and should have reached the peak stage." Ling Han nodded. He had arrived with 4 beautiful women in martial arts attire. Weren't they Lu Ying and the other 4 guards under Sha Yuan? These 4 women were all at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, so they could not be underestimated. Apart from them, there was also a youth dressed in coarse sackcloth. He looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, yet shockingly had reached the immortal level. However, his specific cultivation level could not be seen. This youth's gaze was like that of a tiger, and when he stared at others, it would strike fear into their hearts. There was also a woman in white who looked like a goddess. Her skin was as white as jade, and her lips were as red as if they had been dyed. Her long hair was tied into a large braid that was coiled around her neck. Her expression was cold, and she was like an icy mountain, making others not dare to approach her. There was a youth hugging a sword, and no matter where he went, he would hold the hilt tightly in his arms, as if he was unwilling to let go for even a moment. The last one was a man in gray. He had an ordinary appearance, and if he was thrown into a crowd, he would definitely not be given a second glance. Ling Han had the cloud-piercing shuttle, so his speed was the fastest. However, the Luo clan, Sha clan, and Zhao clan naturally could easily find out his destination. Thus, they finally arrived after spending some time. On the ship, a sailor called out loudly, "We'll set off in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Those who board the ship, hurry up. Everyone pay 10 true origin stones." The youth in coarse sackcloth was the first to board the ship, followed by the woman in white, and then the sword-hugging youth. However, after that, no one else moved. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Come, the remaining people were all here for him. If he did not board the ship, then naturally no one else would board the ship. Come. He and Shui Yenyu walked onto the deck, paid 20 true origin stones, and stood at the bow of the ship. Instantly, the members of the Luo clan, Sha clan, and Zhao clan all moved, all paying true origin stones to board the ship. The sailor stopped Luo Senyun of the Luo clan, and said, "Wait, you're at the Sun-Moon tier, so you can't board the ship." "Why can't I board the ship?" Luo Senyun asked in displeasure. A mere Mountain River tier cultivator dared to stop him. He released his aura lightly, and instantly caused the sailor to tremble in fear. "Humph, sir, if you want to show off, please go somewhere else. This is Tyrant Axe Pier." An elder in embroidered robes appeared like a ghost, a sun and moon hovering behind him. "This is the rule of the Yang clan. Small ships can only carry Mountain River tier cultivators. This is also for everyone's safety, lest we be ambushed by our peers when we set sail." A small ship was guarded by an elite at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. If a Sun-Moon tier cultivator boarded the ship, then who would be able to suppress who? Luo Senyun stared at him for a long time, yet he only humphed. He leaned over to whisper a few words to Luo Yu and Luo Wu, and then retreated to the pier. Even a powerful dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its den. Moreover, Compared to the Yang clan, he couldn't be considered a powerful dragon. He stared at Ling Han, undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Even if he couldn't board the ship, so what? Luo Yu and Luo Wu were both at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and Luo Yu had even reached the peak stage of the consummate level. He could definitely suppress Ling Han with a single hand. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, the ship set sail, and sailed out into the boundless sea. This was a small ship, so it indeed wasn't big. It was only 30 meters long, and 15 meters tall. There were a total of 3 levels, with the passengers living on the top level, and the crew living on the bottom level. The middle level was an armory, and there were cannons installed. These cannons could be powered by true origin stones, and they could unleash terrifying attacks. However, they normally wouldn't fire the cannons, because firing one cannon would burn one or even several true origin stones. The price was too high. The power source of this ship was also true origin stones, and there was a formation set up on the hull of the ship. When it couldn't borrow the power of the wind, it could use true origin stones to activate the formation and sail. When the pier disappeared from view, many pairs of eyes were fixed on Ling Han. Chapter 1009. Ha ha ha, brat, in the end, you still couldn't resist going out to sea. Jiang Anyun laughed loudly. In his opinion, as long as he left the sea, that delicate and seductive beauty would be his. Ling Han ignored him. This was just a clown. Take him down. Jiang Anyun was a little enraged. He was the young master of the Black Five gang. Impudent. A large man appeared. He was extremely muscular, and he was actually 3 meters tall. His muscles were bulging, and they were pitch black, as if they had been forged from cold iron. Cold light was clearly reflected off them. Who are you? How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? Jiang Anyun was displeased. Was his title as the young master of the Black Five gang just for nothing? So many people didn't give him any face. Young gang leader. An elder hurriedly tugged at him, and said in a low voice, "This is Yang Taiching of the Yang clan, an elite at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. It is said that he has cultivated a mystical technique, and his physique is as tough as godly metal, making it difficult for sharp weapons to injure him. He is highly valued by the Yang clan." Jiang Anyun instantly lost his temper. It was true that he was the young master of the Black Five gang, but how could the Black Five gang compare to the Yang clan? Since you're on my ship, you'd better behave yourself. Yang Taiching swept his gaze over every single person on the bow of the ship. How experienced was he? How could he not tell that many people had come for that young man and woman? Once you disembark, you can settle your grudges among yourselves. But if anyone dares to harm anyone on the ship, then don't blame me for being impolite, he said darkly, releasing his aura without holding back. Brother Yang, right? My hands are a bit itchy. How about we exchange a few blows? Luo Yu stepped forward with a smile on his face. All right, Yang Taiching agreed decisively. If he didn't subdue these people, who knew what kind of demon would be stirred up behind his back? Luo Yu took a few steps forward, and stretched out a hand to press down on Yang Taiching. Bang bang bang, Yang Taiching made his move. The two of them fought speed with speed, and in an instant, they had exchanged over 10 blows. Luo Yu let out a muffled groan and retreated a few steps. His face was shockingly pale. Thank you for letting me win, Yang Taiching said calmly with clasped fists. After a while, Luo Yu recovered and said in a hoarse voice, Brother Yang is truly fierce, this one is not his opponent. Once an elite made a move, it would be clear whether there was one or not. Yang Taiching's powerful display of strength instantly caused the hearts of all the people on the ship to tremble, not daring to underestimate him in the slightest. Originally, the members of the Luo clan had all thought that they were from the imperial capital, and thus looked down on these poor and remote natives. However, Yang Taiching's strength was like a solid slap to their faces. This person should be a 2-star genius. With a cultivation base at the peak of the Great Perfection realm and a 2-star genius, he should be the undisputed #1 expert on this ship. Come, we won't be able to kill Ling Han on the ship. Wait. These people had all made up their minds. Their faces were full of smiles, and their expressions did not change in the slightest. I'll say it again. No matter who it is, no one is allowed to make a move against a guest on the ship. Otherwise, if you kill someone, I'll kill you, Yang Taiching said in a sinister voice. Humph. The others all remained silent. Only Jiang Anyun showed his displeasure on his face. This also showed that this person was an idiot. He had already reached the mountain river tier, yet did not have the slightest bit of shrewdness. He was already used to doing what he wanted, and snatching what he wanted. Now that he was being suppressed by someone else, he was naturally extremely displeased. After saying this, Yang Taiching entered the cabin of the ship to rest. This voyage would take a very, very long time. The ship would circle around the sea with a fixed route, and during this period, it would stop at a few famous sea regions. Each time, it would stop for 1 to 3 days, and then sail to the next sea region. What was a famous sea region? It was the region that could possibly hide treasures under this sea region. When that piece of debris of the star had crashed down, it had also shattered into many pieces. Among them, there were 7 pieces that were especially large, and they had flown into 7 different sea regions. Thus, if one wanted to search for treasures, they would usually come to these 7 sea regions. Ling Han admired the scenery for a while. The star sea was filled with astonishing gravity. If cultivators swam in it, it wouldn't be long before they exhausted their energy and sank to the bottom. Of course, after sinking to the bottom, they could still recover their origin power and swim back up with all their might. However, there were also a large number of terrifying demonic beasts in the sea. These demonic beasts had long since adapted to the frightening gravity environment. Moreover, this was an aquatic environment. Thus, if they encountered demonic beasts, it would be extremely dangerous as long as they were at the same cultivation level. If their cultivation level was higher than theirs, then they would basically be done for. Fighting under the sea, the battle prowess of the human race would be greatly reduced. He hadn't come for the treasures under the sea in the first place, so he naturally didn't care too much. After a while, he returned to his cabin and continued to concoct pills. It was shameful to waste time like this. The ship continued to sail, but aside from a few people, no one else had any interest in entering the sea. Their target was all Ling Han. 7 days later, Ling Han finally concocted the first cauldron of heavenly qi pills. This alchemical pill was mainly for consumption by cultivators at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. It wasn't that cultivators at the medium extreme couldn't consume it, but the effects would be much weaker. Thus, Ling Han gave all of the alchemical pills he had concocted to Shui Yanyu, causing this seductive beauty to be extremely stunned. Ling Han actually knew how to concoct pills. Moreover, he had really concocted godly pills. She had indeed sensed that Ling Han was concocting pills. However, because of his repeated failures, she had thought that Ling Han had only just stepped onto the path of alchemy. She had never imagined that he would actually be concocting heavenly qi pills. In the imperial capital, these pills could be sold for 100 true origin stones each. Ling Han had only managed to concoct 3 pills on his first cauldron. However, he had managed to concoct 5 pills on his second cauldron, 7 pills on his third cauldron, and a perfect 10 pills on his 10th cauldron. As far as he was concerned, this was very normal. As the alchemy emperor, he was only lacking in ingredients and cultivation, which was why he hadn't been able to concoct the godly pill. Now that all the conditions had been met, success would naturally follow naturally. However, Shui Yanyu was terrified. Is this man a monster? Not only is he so proficient in martial art, but he's also so astonishingly talented in alchemy as well. How terrifying! However, she was extremely happy. This was because the heavenly chi pill was exactly the spirit medicine that she needed right now. It could help her cultivation level rise rapidly. After using up all of the ingredients, Ling Han began to study the second pill recipe. Heavenly Pearl Pill. This was a level 2 godly pill. Its effect was to simultaneously increase a cultivator's origin power and physical strength. It could also slightly strengthen one's physique. In the immortal realm, there were many people who cultivated body techniques. However, there were very few who could achieve great accomplishment. Moreover, improving one's physique was a long-standing problem. Very few people could raise their physique to the immortal level. Thus, this required far too many resources. Thus, the Heavenly Pearl Pill was extremely expensive. One pill could be sold for 300 true origin stones. Moreover, it was often difficult to find one in the market. At the current stage, this was the pill that was most useful to Ling Han. He was extremely motivated. After thoroughly studying the pill recipe, he began to burn money. Chapter 10:10. Every alchemist was made with money. The difference was how much they spent. In a mere 4 days, Ling Han had wasted 200,000 true origin stones worth of ingredients. This was enough to cause a force like the Luo clan to feel heartache. And this was only for level 2 divine pills. What about level 3, level 4, or level 5 divine pills? Every time they wasted a cauldron, they would cry. Ling Han had spent 1 million true origin stones on ingredients, and only 100,000 was for ingredients for the heavenly chi pill. The rest was for the heavenly pearl pill. As for level 3 and level 4 divine pills, he didn't consider them for now. Everyone, gather on the deck at the front. A voice suddenly sounded throughout the entire ship. It was Yang Tietching's voice. What happened? Shui Yanyu asked. I don't know. Let's go out first. Ling Han shook his head. The two of them exited the cabin. Coincidentally, Jiang Anyun also walked out from the cabin next door. His expression was dark, and he glared fiercely at Ling Han. It was as if he had caught a pair of adulterers in bed. In his mind, a man and a woman alone in a room couldn't possibly do anything good. They would definitely be having sex with each other. They came to the bow of the ship, and saw that there were already a few people standing there. We're about to enter the area of the black fog, Yang Taiching said as he pointed ahead. Yang Taiching said as he pointed ahead. In the black dense fog, our divine sense and eyesight will be greatly affected. At most, we can only see half a foot ahead of us. He paused, and then continued, that's why I gathered everyone here. I don't want anything unpleasant to happen. Obviously, once they entered the area of the black fog, his divine sense wouldn't be able to cover the entire ship. Anything that happened would be out of his control. It wasn't like he didn't know about the tension on this ship. If someone died, he would definitely have to bear the responsibility. Thus, everyone came out obediently. Under his watch, there wouldn't be any problems. Ling Han looked into the distance. He saw that about 1.5 kilometers ahead, there was a black fog area. It covered a large area, and it was impossible to go around it. One had to know that the speed of a ship traveling in this part of the ocean was very, very slow. If they were to make a detour like this, they would have to add at least half a day to their journey. This is a special characteristic of the Star Sea. It will produce black fog from time to time, but no one knows why it is like this, Shui Yanyu said in a low voice beside him. I'm quite interested now. I want to explore the sea. Ling Han laughed and then shook his head. Why are these pirates so obedient? They haven't moved for several days. Shui Yanyu also frowned, appearing to be very unhappy. Other people are afraid of encountering pirates, but the two of them are eager to meet pirates. Everyone, please stay where you are and don't move while we are passing through the black fog, or else. Yang Taiching clenched his fists, his eyes filled with menace. No one spoke, but everyone's gaze was wavering. It was obvious that they each had their own plans. Be careful. Shui Yanyu was slightly nervous. There was no lack of elites at the high extreme of the mountain river tier here, and there were even elites at the consummate level. Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "It's fine. Later, we will enter the Black Tower and talk about life. They can do whatever they want outside." Shui Yenyu's heart instantly rippled. This guy liked to explore her body while talking about life. He was a complete hooligan. The ship was getting closer and closer to the black fog, and the atmosphere on the ship suddenly became tense. "Once we enter the fog, kill that brat," Jiang Anyun ordered his subordinates. "But, young gang leader, Yang Taicheng is right beside us," one of his subordinates said weakly. "Humph, so what? The fog blocks divine sense and vision. As long as you move fast enough, who would know it was you who did it?" Jiang Anyun said. Then, he added, "You definitely can't hurt that woman. Otherwise, I will throw you all into the sea to be buried with her." "Yes, young gang leader." A total of 8 people from the Black 5 gang boarded the ship, and the remaining 7 could only obediently accept his orders. Jiang Ji was busy cultivating all day, and he still had to rely on Jiang Anyun to carry on the family line. Thus, even if Jiang Ji knew about this matter, it was likely that he would support it. On the other side, Zhou Xiao and Fan Yong were also whispering to each other, discussing how they should make their move later. Meanwhile, the 2 members of the Luo clan were similarly restless. Their 4 eyes were fixed on Ling Han, their killing intent boiling. Lu Ying and the other death guards also wore cold expressions, their killing intent surging. Meanwhile, the eyes of the middle-aged man in gray flickered, and his gaze wavered. Meanwhile, the sword-hugging young man, the coarse-clothed young man, and the white-robed woman stood beside Yang Taicheng. It was as if they had also sensed that there would be a turbulent wave, and they didn't want to be caught up in it. It was in this kind of atmosphere that the ship slowly sailed into the fog. Instantly, everyone felt as if they had become blind. Their eyes were wide open, yet they couldn't even see the scenery in front of them. Only when they placed their hands in front of their eyes could they feel a faint blur. Their divine sense was even worse. Once it was released, it was as if it had been swallowed by something. It was completely useless. Thankfully, they still had their hearing. Otherwise, if they lost sight, hearing, and divine sense, the 3 most important senses, at the same time, it was likely that many people would go crazy. On the ship, there was complete silence. But this was only a matter of an instant. Peng, 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 peng. Immediately, the sounds of battle were heard. The turbulent waves of power were unable to sweep away the fog here in the slightest. Thankfully, this ship was specially made, and could even resist the frightening gravity. Naturally, it was also incredibly sturdy. At least, it would be very difficult for mountain river tier cultivators to damage it. "Stop, stop!" Yang Taicheng roared continuously in fury. He charged into the battle, and no matter who he encountered, he would grab them and throw them out. Peng, peng, peng. They continuously crashed into the pillars and cabins of the ship. The other crew members also joined in the battle, trying to stop the chaotic battle, but this only made the battle even more chaotic. In the fog, no one was clear, and they could only move based on their instincts. After about 30 minutes, a ray of sunlight suddenly shone over, and the fog began to dissipate. The battle instantly stopped, and when the sky that had not been seen for a long time reappeared, everyone could be seen standing obediently in their original positions. It was as if they had all been civilized people just then, and no one had made a move. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that some people had been punched in the face, and their eye sockets were all black. Some had disheveled hair, and some even had their clothes ripped apart. All of them were in an extremely sorry state. Young gang leader. A cry of surprise traveled over Everyone turned around, and saw that Jiang Anyun was lying on the ground with his back facing the sky. There was a bloody hole in his chest, and it had coincidentally pierced through his heart. He was already dead. His face was filled with astonishment. It was as if he had not imagined that he would actually be attacked, and even killed with a single blow. "It's you. It's definitely you." The elder from the Black Five gang pointed at Ling Han, his face filled with killing intent. Cell phones read more easily. Chapter 10-12. You're really bad. In the Black Tower, Shui Yenyu shook her head and sighed. Luo Yu and Luo Wu were the backbone of the Luo clan, while Zhou Xiao, Fan Yong, and Lu Ying had lived for tens of thousands of years, but all of them were toyed around in the palm of Ling Han's hand. He said that he wanted to make the murderer reveal himself, but in reality, he only wanted these people to fight among themselves, and he was enjoying the show from the other side. "Then do you like it?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Unfortunately, under the isolation of the fog, he similarly couldn't find anything in the Black Tower, which made him feel very regretful. "No," Shui Yenyu said hurriedly, afraid that Ling Han would make a move on her again. She liked and hated it at the same time. Ling Han snickered, and said, "Isn't it said that women love bad men?" "Twisted theory." Shui Yenyu criticized. "She wouldn't like a bad man. Otherwise, why would she fall out with Xiao Luan?" "It's about time to go out," Ling Han said. He could already feel the sunlight shining down on them again. Xiao, the two of them exited the Black Tower. With the isolation of the fog, no one could possibly discover that they had disappeared for a period of time, and now suddenly appeared again. The sun shone, and light returned. Everyone felt joy as if they had returned from hell. The feeling of losing their sight and divine sense was really terrible. Gasp! However, everyone was immediately stunned because there were 7 more corpses on the deck, lined up neatly. They just happened to be the remaining members of the Black Five gang. Every one of them had died in the same way, a sword had struck their chest, and it had been a fatal blow. Who had done it? Everyone's eyes involuntarily turned to Ling Han. He was the one who had suggested to re-enter the fog, so he was naturally the most suspicious. "Ling Han, what else do you have to say this time?" Luo Yu immediately shouted. "Of course there's nothing to say to a fool like you." Ling Han smiled, and said, "My idea was not bad, right? The murderer has appeared again." However, everyone didn't work together. Otherwise, with so many elites at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier standing guard, how could the murderer have easily retreated after killing them? Sophistry. You were clearly the one who did it. Luo Wu pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Everyone, let's be honest. Just now, everyone was attacking me. How could I have the time to assassinate people? Moreover, I killed as many as 7. Don't slander me," Fan Yong said indifferently. "That's right, don't spout nonsense." Luo Yu also immediately denied it. Attacking a disciple of the Scarlet Heaven Academy would not be a good thing if word of this got out. Yang Tietching's thick brows furrowed into the shape of a Z. He was naturally clear that the situation had been so chaotic just now, and everyone had indeed been attacking Ling Han. If one were to say that in such a chaotic situation, Ling Han would still be able to find the time to kill people, and kill as many as 7 at that, he really did not believe it. However, on the other hand, Ling Han was indeed the biggest suspect. He was the one who suggested returning to the fog, and he had a feud with the Black Five gang. All the evidence pointed to Ling Han. "Why don't we return to the mist again? But this time, we have to tie him up." Luo Yu pointed at Ling Han. "Good idea." Fan Yong immediately clapped his hands in agreement. "Hee, Ling Han, didn't you say that you are innocent? Then tie yourself up. If someone still dies after leaving the mist, then it proves that you are not the murderer," Luo Wu followed up. Ling Han scoffed, and said, Are you all idiots? If the murderer does not move, then wouldn't I be tortured into a confession? Furthermore, you all are looking at me so unkindly, so how would I dare to tie myself up and become your live target? Brother Yang, you are the owner of this ship. What do you say? Luo Yu threw the problem to Yang Taicheng. Yang Taicheng considered for a long while, and then said, Ling Han, come here. I will protect you. What he meant by saying this was that he agreed to Luo Yu and the others' suggestion. After restraining Ling Han, they would return to the mist. Ling Han considered for a moment, and then said, all right, I believe Lord Yang. He nodded at Shui Yenyu, and the two of them walked to Yang Taicheng's side. Yang Taicheng drew out 2 sets of shackles, and said, these are forged from level 4 godly metal, and there are 3 divine patterns on them. If they are locked, even those at the consummate level of the mountain river tier will not be able to undo it. Everyone nodded. These shackles were specially used to restrain elites, and they were only forged from level 4 godly metal. There were also level 6, level 7, and level 8 that could even restrain elites at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier. Those 3 divine patterns would restrict the power of cultivators, and once they were shackled, they would be no different from a cripple. He's dead for sure now. Luo Yu and the others all thought. They did not care whether Ling Han was the murderer or not, and merely wanted to use this opportunity to kill Ling Han. In front of everyone, Yang Taicheng handcuffed Ling Han, and at the same time said, don't worry, as long as I am alive, I will definitely guarantee your safety. Ling Han did not believe this in the slightest. Yang Taicheng was indeed very strong, but the people here were not weak either. Luo Yu, Lu Ying, and the other 3 women were all at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and with the 5 of them attacking together, how could they not be able to stop Yang Taicheng? As long as they could restrain Yang Taicheng, even if it was only for 1 or 2 moves, the remaining people would naturally be able to kill Ling Han as easily as blowing off dust. The reason why Ling Han was willing to agree was because he had the Black Tower. Yang Taicheng suddenly shouted, lads, come over here and form a circle around these 2 people. Even if you die, do not move a single step. Yes. The 20 or so sailors answered in unison, and formed 2 circles in front of Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. Humph, they are only trash in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, what use could they be? Luo Yu and the others all thought. The gap between each cultivation level of the immortal level was too great. Even a sub-minor level could form a crushing advantage, what more when there was a difference of 2 or 3 minor levels. Even the legendary 5-star geniuses would only be able to hold a grudge. The ship turned again, and sailed back into the black fog. Everyone became silent again. The bow of the ship slowly sailed into the black fog, and when the last ray of light disappeared, a great battle suddenly erupted. Ding, 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 peng, peng, peng. Everyone attacked without any reservations. Saber light and sword shadows surged, and power surged. Yang Taicheng roared again and again. He turned into a wall, wanting to block all the people that were charging over. He was at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and had even reached the peak stage, so there was no more room for improvement unless he advanced to the sun-moon tier. After a few thousand years of tempering, his battle prowess had become incredibly fierce and domineering. When he punched out with his iron fists, their might was not the slightest bit weaker than the impact of godly metal of the same level. Furthermore, he was a 2-star genius, so his battle prowess was truly frightening. But the problem was that there were really too many people that were attacking him, and none of them had any intention of fighting to the death with him. They only wanted to charge past this wall that he was. As such, the difficulty for him naturally increased. It was impossible for him to block every single one of them. Ah! A sailor screamed in agony, and fell to the ground, groaning. You dare! Yang Taicheng was furious. His 3-meter-tall body exuded a black metallic luster. He was finally serious, and unleashed a powerful move. Chapter 1013. Just as the chaotic battle raged, the ship once again sailed out of the fog. Instantly, the battle stopped. Black light danced all over Yang Tiecheng's body, making him look like a demon god from the depths of hell, exuding a terrifying aura. His gaze swept over, and he saw that the crew members that had formed a circle were already swaying left and right, all moaning in pain. Thankfully, they were only slightly wounded. He relaxed slightly, but killing intent immediately appeared on his face. 2 people fell on their backs, blood gushing out of their chests, forming a pool of blood below them. The mysterious killer from before appeared again. Obviously, the killer's target was also Ling Han. After dealing with the 2 targets that were blocking the way, he headed straight for, Everyone was dumbfounded. They saw that Ling Han was sitting in his original position, and Shui Yanyu was standing beside him. Both of them were extremely calm, and there was no trace of battle on their bodies. This was too inconceivable. One had to realize that each of them had left some traces in the chaotic battle, but why didn't the target, Ling Han, have the slightest trace of battle? Moreover, Ling Han's hands and feet were still shackled, which made them speechless. Then, can you open the shackles now? Ling Han asked smilingly. This thing could only seal his power, but had no effect on divine sense, so he could naturally enter the Black Tower calmly and listen to another good show. Yang Tiecheng's expression was livid. He first released the shackles on Ling Han, and then went to the 2 crew members that had been killed. He did not speak for a long time. No matter who did it, I will definitely drag him out and tear him to pieces, he said word by word, his gaze sweeping over everyone, filled with cold killing intent. Now, aside from Ling Han, everyone was a suspect. Report, the crew member in charge of the lookout shouted from the top of the mast, enemy sighted. Enemy sighted. Pirates are charging over. Pirates. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had been hoping for pirates to appear a few days ago, and had not thought that at this critical juncture, there would actually really be pirates coming. Prepare for battle, Yang Taicheng said coldly. He clearly knew that the person who had killed his underling was on his ship, but because he didn't know who it was, he could do nothing about it. This made him very angry. Now that the pirates are coming, it just gives him a chance to vent his anger. 12 small boats appeared in front of them. They were really small, and each boat only had 5 people on it. They were already full, and there was no extra space. The people on the boat were all rowing at lightning speed, like arrows. They were clearly 5 miles away, but in the blink of an eye, the distance had shortened to less than 2 miles. At such a close distance, the people on the ship could clearly see that all of their faces were filled with malevolence and cruelty. Fire, Yang Taicheng ordered. Yes. Bang. 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 The cannons were fired, but the pirates were obviously used to this kind of scene. They did not panic at all and drove their small boats to avoid the cannons. Wanting to directly avoid a cannon strike was nearly impossible. After all, the muzzle of the cannon shot out a beam of light. It was a destructive beam formed by a complex array formation that extracted the power of true essence stones. However, before firing the cannons, one had to aim at the target, and those small boats did not move in a straight line at all. They twisted like agile snakes, and completely avoided the cannon strike. Yang Taicheng did not panic, and continued to order, prepare for battle. Ha 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 ha. One pirate after another flipped over the edge of the boat, laughing strangely. This was a kind of psychological warfare, frightening the enemy and causing the enemy's morale to plummet. This is a good business trip. There are actually so many hot girls. Beautiful girls at the mountain river tier, all of them can be sold for a high price. Hee, same rules. Kill all the men, and take the women away. Okay. Very soon, all 60 pirates boarded the ship, and the real battle erupted. Although they had been scuttling around in the fog, and a few secret battles had broken out, and many people had died, they only had one target at that time, Ling Han. The 8 people from the Black 5 gang and 2 crew members had actually just suffered an undeserved calamity. But it was different now. Pirates would not be benevolent with you. If you did not offend them, they would not come to kill you. In the eyes of pirates, women were property, and men were enemies that had to be eliminated. Kill. Everyone was aware that they definitely could not fight amongst themselves at this time. Otherwise, they would all become sacrifices under the butcher knives of the pirates. Even if the beautiful girls would not die in a short time, they were sure that their ending would be even more tragic than death. Wife, let's compete and see who can kill more pirates. Ling Han laughed loudly, and charged out with his sword. Let's compete. Shui Yenyu also had a personality that refused to admit defeat, and was not to be outdone. If I win, I'll hug you to sleep at night. If you win, I'll let you hug me to sleep, Ling Han said with a low chuckle. Damn pervert. Shui Yenyu spat, her sword rising and falling, slashing continuously. You two are quite lovey-dovey. However, this brat is dead for sure. Beautiful girl, you don't have to worry, there will be many people who will become your men later, and I guarantee that they will feed you until you are full. A pirate charged over, brandishing his saber. Ling Han humphed, and shot out a 7-kill subduing soul technique, directly causing that pirate to enter a dazed state. Shui Yenyu followed up with a sword strike, piercing through that person's heart. In the next instant, this person's corpse had already been sucked into Ling Han's spatial spirit tool. If he did not bring his corpse back to the academy, how could he prove that he had completed the mission? Things like spatial spirit tools were really too common in the immortal realm, and it was not strange for everyone to have a dozen of them. Another pirate charged over from the adulterous couple. This person was much more powerful, and his cultivation level had reached the high extreme. As his saber slashed over, black light flashed, and an ear-piercing sound rang out, almost causing one's ears to bleed. Ling Han shot out the 7-kill subduing soul technique, but it only caused the other to pause slightly. Shui Yenyu's sword strike did not succeed, and was blocked by the other's saber. If Ling Han used the Black Tower, then he would naturally be able to suck that pirate in, but if a living person disappeared into thin air, then it would cause a commotion. However, Ling Han clearly knew that although everyone was engaged in a fierce battle, there were still many gazes fixed on him. He humphed, and his sword and palm danced together, activating the mysterious 3000 and earth overturning seal at the same time. A mere early stage of the medium extreme, and you think you're worthy of fighting me? That pirate laughed loudly, and brandished his saber, slashing at Ling Han's waist. With a thought from Ling Han, the divine patterns of gravity were activated. That pirate instantly exclaimed in surprise, and only felt that the saber in his hand had suddenly become a dozen times heavier, almost falling out of his hand. He hurriedly tightened his grip, but it was inevitable that this saber strike had greatly missed its target. He couldn't help but be stunned. What kind of secret technique was this? It was actually so powerful. One had to realize that he was in the middle stage of the high extreme, and was more than a minor level higher than Ling Han. In terms of power, he had an absolute advantage, so how could he still be affected? Ling Han had already charged over, and his sword and palm struck out together. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.